the 2016 recap. So what we do is we do Reactception. We react to Josh reacting to the Law. So big shout outs to both the Law for the original video, and obviously we're still leeching content from Josh as well. So huge shout outs to both of them. Make sure you give them their due credits. Like and subscribe to both of their channels, and posting the links to both videos below. Make sure you like and subscribe. And let's learn about 2016. So let's preface 2016. 2016 is the year of Pepe, burning of our beatrice comes out, domain monarchs. This is the year where I swap decks on the bubble of nationals, on the bubble of worlds, and I don't get to go to worlds because of it. And it's probably the hardest loss I've had in my entire career. We'll get to that story as we approach that event. But that was the last year I didn't go to worlds. Every year since I've been, because I've been extremely determined to make sure I got back to the height of competition. So yeah.
You have a movie to watch. Am I the only one? I feel like these have been getting longer and longer and longer and longer. But we still haven't watched the 2016 Yu-Gi-Oh recap. We've watched every single one up until this point. If you end up enjoying it, feel free to visit the Law YGO's channel and give him some love, as always.
Exactly.
But let us begin.
When we last left off, the meta was in a state of flux. Following the release of Docs and the subsequent ban list that took everything pre-core out of the meta, Kozmo was left the lone wolf at the top of the meta, with a couple of pendulum brews starting to pop up here and there.
Yeah, I remember the masked
short for
chameleon
Performapal
decks.
Perform Age. Those piles had grown substantially in power too with the release of the Master of Pendulum structure deck, bringing Pendulum Magicians and support for Performapal and Odd Ice, allowing the strategy to rival
cards
and
were
even
good.
surpass
Wow.
Kozmo in the meta. But this was kept exclusively to the regional level, as the only
Yeah, so we're starting the year off with where did we leave 2015? Necros is finally dead. Performapal releases. Was it already broken? Is this post full power Pepe, or is it before Bosch or after Bosch?
This is pre. Bosch is about to come out. Bosch is gonna have Strike.
Oh, it's
and-
about to become broken. Okay.
Yeah.
potential YCS to showcase this was canceled at the end of 2015. Because of this, Pepe would have to show its growth following the next core set release. And to anyone who knows about Pepe, this set would instantly make the
Yeah,
Pendulum Magician pieces obsolete.
this was
Well,
kind
this
of
is Breakers
OD.
of Shadow, right?
It could contender for one of the most impactful sets of all
Breakers
time.
of Shadow. Release date, January 15th, 2016. Set type, core set. Major strategies, Performapal, Draco Slayer, Kozmo. Impact.
You're gonna die, clown!
Bosch is probably one of the most infamous sets of the Arc 5 era, which is kind of funny in retrospect, as on the surface, it doesn't look like it would shift too much. No major revolutions in new archetypes, a couple of pieces of support for existing ones.
Really, I feel like there were really good staple cards, and then like Pendulum just got like absurdly better.
But I think it's true. I think the deck or the set doesn't have that many cards, but the good ones it has were absolutely insane.
I don't think that's true, because there's Twin Twisters, there's Fiendish Rhino Warriors, there's Cyber Dragon Infinity, there's Solemn Strike, and then there's the monkey board. There's what's it called? What's the one that pops to Pendulum Sorcerer?
Hey, like what is it? Performapal Pendulum Sorcerer,
Neptabyss as well.
Solemn Strike.
Guiding
Although
Ariadne
these
is
two
good.
cards alone, like they almost killed the game. It's like, I mean, not killed the game. Like they killed the format pretty much. Like they made
Desires and
Pendulum so
Desires already
insane.
out. Draco Face Off was in this,
It also
right?
had Twin Twister. It has Cyber Dragon Infinity. So like it's just a couple of really strong individual cards that completely break the game. It's like, I think it's comparable to like Poplar coming out. Like Performapal Pendulum Sorcerer releasing is, I think, pretty comparable to what Poplar did to like the Snake Eye deck. Tin Can, yeah, but like
Nothing as game warping as you'd expect from a set that
Oh,
causes
Tin
you
Can's
zero
a funny
takeover.
one.
In
The card is
reality,
playable,
the set
yeah.
may have only had a bunch of smaller pieces for various strategies, but all of those smaller pieces could be utilized by the same centralized pile at the center of the meta, which would result in a complete hostile takeover of Pepe on the format as a tier 0 mega threat, arguably the worst we've seen since Teledad. Let's start with the
It was
aforementioned
pretty rough.
Performapals, who saw 3 pieces of relevant support here. Monkey Board is a scale 1.
I
that serves as a
did
Performapal
really
combined
bad at
scale,
YCS
which in practice
Atlanta,
means
the
that
Pepe
Monkey Board
one.
on its own was full pendulum scales, as it covered the low scale and allowed you to search for a high scale such as Lizard Draw or the new scale 6 of Guitartle, who draws a
Guitar
card when the
Turtle.
Performapal scale is activated while it's already in scale. This would be extremely useful alongside Lizard Draw specifically, as you could scale the turtle, scale Lizard to draw 1 off the turtle, then send Lizard for its effect to draw 1. Effectively
Pepe was based for this combo. This was my favorite part of Pepe.
The draw
giving you
is
a
everyone's
Drawing
favorite
cards.
combo.
Well, I don't know. I'm noticing a pattern. Whenever cards draw cards, I like it.
Lastly, Performapal Pendulum
That's
Sorcerer
just
was
Yu-Gi-Oh
an
player
OCG and
syndrome in general. Like, we're ridiculous to the feeling of drawing cards. I'm sitting here drawing my hand with my deck right now. I just want to draw cards, bro.
on special summon, popped up to 2 cards you control to search for Performapals up to the number of cards you popped. This was an incredibly powerful effect that standardly would let you pop scales to search for either follow-up or the Lizard Turtle combo. but
You
there
get
was a
Lizard Turtle
pretty
draw
major
too. It was
oversight
always
on this
Lizard
particular
Turtle
card.
for us.
On its initial release, Pendulum Sorcerer was mistranslated, stating
Was Cyber Dragon good back then, or was it only Nova Infinity? It was not good. It was just Nova Infinity. Because there was Constellar Ptolemaeus, right? Which actually rank up rank 4s into 5, and then Infinity on top. Cyber Dragon was always like rogue playable for a while around this type of era, but like very much rogue, like firmly rogue and not meta.
That it searched up to the number of monsters destroyed, not cards. As such, because it happened at the same stage of the effect as the pop, if you popped your scales with this effect, it would consider the pop cards as spells, meaning you wouldn't get the search off. This would be a
really? I don't remember this. If that was the case, they fixed it mega fast.
pretty major nerf to the card's applications, specifically in regards to popping cards like Plushfire and the Scale, which was a very common play at the time due to Plushfire's float effect. Buster Blader would be the newest attempt at retraining a monster used by Yugi, giving us the Destruction Sword Master, who's treated as Buster Blader on the field and in grave, equips opponent's monsters destroyed by battle to himself, and can send an equipped monster to grave to pop all same type monsters the opponent controls, as well as the Whelps, a series of Dragon Tuner companions for Buster Blader. Buster Whelp would be the main one, able to search a Destruction Sword card on normal.
I forgot this card's in here, because this actually kind of matters a bit later, but obviously right now it does nothing.
Sword card if you control Buster Blader. This was a quick and easy way to access one of the deck's primary bosses, being Dragon Destroyer Swordsman through a search for fusion, a quick play spell that can recur itself by discarding any.
You know the set is down bad when like the second card we're talking about pretty much is Buster Whelp of the Destruction.
Okay, this shouldn't be the second card he talks about, to be fair. Like, there's better stuff, but these cards aren't even bad. Like, these were very playable, right? Like, even if they weren't the
Fusion
best.
Summon gains 1,000 attack for every dragon in the opponent's field or grave, swapping all dragons to defense, locking their effects, and gains piercing. Or the Synchro Buster Dragon, who turns all opponent's monsters into dragons, can summon a Buster Blader from grave if you do not control one, and can equip a Destruction Sword monster from grave to Buster Blader once per turn, being a companion piece for the anti-dragon bosses. As for the other Whelps, each can equip from hand or field to a Buster Blader. With
I guess I should adjust my...
I always forget which one's the broken one. The middle one, right? Cannot special summon from the extra deck. Yep.
And an effect that moves
we hate the middle one.
Buster Blader for an immediate
bonus. We all love
Dragon Buster locking the opponent's special summons from extra deck and can summon itself while equipped. Wizard Buster locking the opponent's grave effects and can send itself to grave to recur a Destruction Sword monster. And Robot Buster locking face-up spell and trap effects and can send itself to grave to boost the equipped monster by 1,000 for the turn. This would be an extremely comprehensive and solid wave of legacy support for Buster Blader, giving the deck a solid direction. But it's
well, I don't know about solid direction. It's good support. And I personally, I know at the time I thought it was cool they made Buster Blader into like a theme deck. Looking back at it, I feel like it's just another one of those instances where we're making this legacy deck playable by giving it floodgates, which I think is just a kind of cringe thing to do, but
pretty heavily from the retrain.
Sure, I guess I'll agree with that.
Deck, meaning half of the support
never gonna
use with it until
vouch
the
for
on the
floods
field or the
being
grave,
printed.
leading to the deck breaking the high heaven more often
Less
than not.
floodgates,
although it
the
would see
better.
rogue level play in formats with high dragon representation for obvious reasons. Draco Slayer would receive easily its most impactful support yet, receiving another Draco Slayer main deck name in Master Pendulum, being a normal pendulum that can pop another pendulum scale on field walls and scale, and the fusion boss of Dynamist Power, a contact fusion of a Draco Slayer pendulum and any other pendulum, can revive a Draco Slayer pendulum once per turn, and blocks all pendulum cards you control from destruction of any kind. However, there was one more piece of support this time that would take Draco Slayer over the top, being Draco Face Off, a quick play spell with Draco Slayer and a Draco Overlord from deck. Have the opponent select one at random, and then the selected monster could either be special summoned or set in the scale, with the other moving to the extra deck. This was insanely powerful, giving you easy access to your luster lines at best, or at worst giving you a free level 4 body and vector pendulum while placing luster in the extra deck for the eventual pendulum summon back, making this an absolute staple for all pendulum decks moving forward. Dynamist would be the third Draco Slayer tie-in archetype, a series of level 4 and 5 machines.
Okay, this was
protection and scales, with all the low scales.
Some people tried playing this because they have a good trap card, but this deck was mega ass.
With each having unique monster effects, with Stegosaur popping both sides of any combat.
Should you just buy your tier core now since the teams don't have
for
anything?
each Dynamist card you control.
If you want tier,
Dynamist
yeah,
when it destroys a monster in combat. Brachion able to summon itself from hand if your opponent has the highest attack on field and you control no Brachions. Ceratops able to summon itself from hand if you control only Dynamist and no Ceratops. And Rex able to tribute a Dynamist at
we can skip the Dynamist cards, right? Like
piercing or spin back a card from the opponent's hand or field and gain 100 attack. They also had 2 relevant spell traps in charge at best. Shiranui would be a new zombie archetype.
Okay, Shiranui is one where I have a little bit more respect for. I love these cards. Solitaire and Spirit Master are my mans. Spectral Sword is fine, but these cards are also very fringe.
I've seen this card being played for the first time in Duelings like last year.
Shiranui card when sent to grave.
Now, I can tell Josh doesn't cube enough because cube this card is
Spirit Master,
broken.
who summons a Shiranui from hand on normal and pops a card when banished, and Samurai, who can banish a zombie from
these cards are dog shit
banish
though.
any monster it battles that turn, and recurs a Shiranui monster when banished. Their synchro bosses here were Samurai Saga,
yeah, these cards
level 6
suck.
that can shuffle back a banished zombie to swap all opponent's monsters to defense with less attack than the returned monsters, and drops an opponent by 500 when banished, and Shogun Saga, a level 8 that banishes a zombie from grave on summon to boost itself by that monster's attack, and floats into a banished zombie with 0 defense on destruction. Shiranui had the bones of an interesting strategy for sure, unique way of utilizing the standard zombie shtick of filling up the grave and recursive payoffs, but unfortunately was just not consistent enough.
Shiranui has been meta in both TCG and Duelings in the past. I don't know if I would agree to that.
In the TCG, it would be just Spirit Master
Shiranui has been meta
Solitaire,
in the TCG because people played specifically Solitaire with one Spirit Master.
And Solitaire is not even the set. Solitaire comes out in Dark Illusion.
I don't know if that's a fair statement. In Duelings, yes, absolutely. The Shiranui had its own deck in Duelings, but in the TCG, it was just a zombie pile where you played exactly 2 different Shiranui cards out of like 15 or 20. I don't know how many they have. I don't know.
I agree.
I don't know if that counts. Really.
It doesn't.
At this juncture to become meta, seeing some rogue-level experimentation with Unizombie for helping set up Spectral Sword lines. Kozmo would see its third wave of support here in Tin Can.
Tin
A pilot who can pay
Can.
500 to choose 3 Kozmo cards from deck, then add 1 at
R2D2.
random to hand while dumping the other 2 to grave. Sword Troopers, a pilot who can pay 1,000 to revive a pilot in grave. Delta Shuttle, a ship that can dump a Kozmo from deck to grave to
I
drop
forgot
a
about
monster's
Delta
attack by its
Shuttle.
level times 100. Dark Eclipser, a ship that can't be targeted and can banish a Kozmo
Terrible.
monster from grave to negate traps, notably not floating into a Kozmo on death, rather searching one instead, and Cosmojo, a trap that pops a Kozmo to non-targeting banish a card on field. This wave would spark an interesting change in direction for Cosmo's deck building over the next couple of months, mainly centering around the new pilot of Tin Can, as by using its effect, one could actively set up the grave with multiple
God, I
ships
love
and then revive them
Cosmos.
using cards like Call the Haunted and Oasis.
This deck is so
Dragon.
ass.
Can is what the deck needed, right? Because before this, Kozmo, the best pilot, or really the only good pilot that Kozmo really had was Farm Girl, which only functioned going second. So now they
Skip
actually had
song.
plans for going
What?
first and would actually choose first most of the time, right? At least I think most of the Kozmo versions in this upcoming format would choose first. And it was
So I think people didn't realize about that build up until like May, but yeah, after like May, people started playing Demise Kozmo, which was like just a bunch of traps.
Tin Can control stuff. I don't know. Tin Can is pretty well balanced, to be honest. I think Tin Can was a really good card at the time, and it was frustrating if your opponent opened with Tin Can sometimes, but looking back, it was probably a well-designed card. Because it was strong, it made Kozmo playable without it being like way too powerful. So it feels like just right, looking back at it.
And Souls. This direction of the deck's building style would receive the colloquial name of Tin Can Turbo, and while it wouldn't be super popular for now, it would fundamentally shift Cosmo's place in the meta over the coming months with new releases and the strategy's last support wave. Kaiju would receive their most interesting support wave yet, receiving Chizukiru, the now strongest Kaiju body at 3,300, but also a new reason to actually play it. Interrupted Kaiju Slumber was effectively Dark Hole
Oh
that summoned
right, I
two
forgot about
from
Kaiju
deck,
Slumber.
one to each
This
side
card
of
is
the
very
field,
good.
and could be banished from grave on the following turn to search another Kaiju. This would spark a movement of using the Kaijus as an engine that was effectively Dark Hole but better, wiping the board and giving you an immediate 1,100 damage to push to the
One
opponent by
point in the
attacking
graveyard
over the Gamma
effect
Seal
was
with
good.
I don't know why, but I don't remember people playing these in 2016 much. I remember people starting to really play these during Zodiac format in 2017.
I remember people
That's
in
the
BA
first time
play
I
it because
really
you get the
remember
graveyard effect.
Slumber being like a super popular card. I don't think in 2016. I was surprised for a moment that these were in Bosch. The Slumber, because I don't remember anyone using them in Pepe format.
Yeah, I don't
then
think
being
anyone
able to
played
search
it right
another Gamma
away.
Seal on a following turn to out whatever the opponent built after. Majespecter would receive a more minor support wave here in Okama, who sets a Majespecter spell trap from deck on summon, and Sonics, which doubles a Majespecter's attack and offense, but halves the damage it inflicts that turn. These two
Terrible.
would find a home in Majespecter decks, namely for the
Well, I
added
even print
flexibility
that.
they gave to Majespecter setups, with Okama providing a search for either pool of responses the deck had access to. Guiding Ariadne could, when destroyed, reveal 3 counter traps in deck to have the opponent pick 1 to add to your hand, shuffling the rest.
I don't know if you guys saw that. Josh just seems tilted with Ariadne.
Guiding Ariadne
I've lost this card enough times. I don't hate it. I don't like this card at all, but I can't say I have a hatred towards it. But Josh does not look happy. It looks like there's a story there.
could, when destroyed, reveal 3 counter traps in deck to have the opponent pick 1 to add to your hand, shuffling the rest back in. This would be
So
yet another
cringe.
option for Pepe, as not only could it potentially search Solemn Warning if the opponent was daring enough to give it to you, but it also
So, Guiding Ariadne is another example of a card, of a pendulum card, that could have been such a cool way. Like, I love when pendulum cards are being used as, like, I don't know how to phrase it, but, like, outside of the usual pendulum slob, where you find an idea, because pendulum monsters conceptually are relatively interesting, because they can both be monsters or spell traps at the same time. So, like, having a card that you can use in different ways can design wise, it opens up a lot of really cool ways.
Yeah, like a central
how you
card
can
feed.
use Guiding Ariadne, for example, in the deck it's
Oh, look,
designed
this
for
person said here.
initially
Yeah.
is like counter fairy, right? That's definitely what it is, right? So you can like put it in your scale to make all your counter traps free, which was a real problem for counter fairy decks back in the day, right? Like, I mean, not in 2016, no one was playing counter fairies really, but like theoretically, it was there to solve a problem for the counter deck where like you would run out of life points or run out of cards in hand to activate all your powerful counter traps, right? So that's one thing this fixed. But also another problem that counter fairy had, or notoriously had back in the day, was like sometimes you would draw all of your traps and no monsters, so you can just summon this, right? You can just summon it in front of your counter traps, apply some pressure with it, and when it dies, it searches you a counter trap. So like conceptually, this card is really cool. Here's the problem: if you don't place careful locks on pendulum cards, they just end up in the pendulum slob deck, like in the pile of pendulum cards.
Pendulum
And this
slob
card-
decks. That's not
They could
a
have made this card even better,
terminology I've heard
and then
before.
just put some restrictions on it so that you can only really play it in counter fairy. And maybe, who knows?
I guess I've never really thought of that because I've always just kind of seen every pendulum card as part of the pendulum soup shit. And as a result, I've like never liked any pendulum card. But I guess if they were used in the type of fashion he's talking about, I wouldn't hate it. But we'd also just never see that happening because Konami's never designed cards like that. This is kind of, yeah, I mean, I get what he's going for though, how this is disingenuine as far as counter fairy support goes, because that's never the role it fills.
maybe Counter Fairy could have been a thing, right? If they made a more powerful version of this card that only goes into Counter Fairy. But no, they decide to keep it more generic. So no one played Counter Fairy, and instead just put this card into Pendulum decks to, when you go first, search like a bunch of Solemns. Which is cringe, right? That's like how everyone won with Pepe going first, like was just like setting up a bunch of Solemns, and no one could play through it because of how good Solemns were against Pendulum as well, right? As someone who never liked Counter Fairy, I have no problem with this. I mean, you don't have to root for Counter Fairy to be good to see the problem that I'm describing, because that applies to more cards throughout the history of Yu-Gi-Oh, right? Where instead of helping the deck they are designed to help, you just keep them too generic, so instead they just help like other decks more.
Rip Beatrice, right?
I just wanted to say Ariadne conceptually was a really cool card, but the way it was played was just not great, right? Because no one used it for its intended purpose.
Well, it's a bit weirder with Klee, because Klee is like the Klee cards just don't have any abilities. They either have no Pend effect or they have no monster effect. So they're kind of like fake, but I get it.
With a new counter trap of Solemn Strike, which can negate and destroy either a monster effect or inherent special summon for the cost of 1,500 life points, being a massive staple in the meta almost immediately thanks to it being a way to block pendulum summon pushes. Another option was a more budget-friendly Ultimate Providence, which was an omni-negate that cost discarding the corresponding card super type from hand, which would see some experimentation. Twin Twisters was yet another variant of MST, taking a discard to use but popping up the 2 spell traps instead. This would be an instant staple, especially in a metagame centered around pendulums, as the versatility of being able to snipe both scales or remove multiple
card was so expensive on release for super rare
was too good of a deal to pass up for most players, seeing mass play almost immediately.
Dueling's card. Twin Twister was so huge in the TCG metagame for so long. To reduce it to Dueling's card is almost insulting. Twin Twister is my fucking mans.
The third of the elemental variants of the classic Mirror Force, flipping any affected monster face down permanently instead of destroying them.
My favorite Mirror Force. What's your favorite Mirror Force, chat? Mine is Quaking.
Oh, Providence.
Immediately as
his favorite's Quaking? What's my favorite Mirror Force? Favorite Mirror Force? It's probably just the original. Probably just original OG Mirror Force is my go-to. Within modern context, I guess Drowning would be my favorite.
Opponent zones with this was actually surprisingly useful. Fiendish Rhino Warrior was an OCG import that blocked other fiends from being destroyed. It was a fiend from deck when sent to grave, being an instant staple in Burning Abyss.
OG. I would think OG is the most, obviously the favorite one of most people. But I really like Quaking. I think Drowning is like if Drowning is your favorite, you're probably a gambling addict, because Drowning is either completely dead or completely insane.
But okay, okay. To be fair, most Mirror Forces are like that because they're so easy to play around. But also, Quaking is terrible versus Link monsters right now. Like, obviously, like if you're going to make it important. So like obviously for this time period, Quaking ends up being the best one. But like there are many times where Storming is the best or Drowning is the best. And then obviously before they were all released, then Mirror Force is the best. Called out like that. I got backfired because all of chat, at least Josh's chat, is giving the exact same answers that that I was giving. I don't know, man. Drowning goes fucking hard sometimes, and Mirror Force, the OG, it's just the OG, man. Like I don't know what to say.
Blocked the BA self pop and let you Foolish Burial 1 after using it. Neptabyss, the Atlantean Prince, could send an Atlantean from deck.
I was so sad with this card because I love mermals. Like the 2012-2013 mermail deck is one of my favorite decks of all time, and I saw new Atlanteans, and I'm like, oh my god, I get to play this deck again. And this card looks broken. And this is my first time realizing when a new support comes out, it doesn't mean that the deck keeps the same identity. Neptabyss in the Mermail deck changes how the deck is played and how and everything about how its core build is kind of focused around. Now it became a lot more about hand ripping and really dumb OTKs and combos, where instead it was more control based. Then there was a mid range game. And playing for the follow-up was extremely important. That didn't really... That did... But anyways, yeah, so the deck just became very different than what it used to be. That's when I kind of learned not to get too excited when old archetypes get support, because if they change the core way the archetype plays and how it reacts, then it's no longer the same thing, right? Like, I no longer love Mermails and Atlanteans, which is really sad because it's just not the same deck. And this card is a problem. This card is broken and not in the way that helps the old Atlantean strategy. So this card was very depressing for me because I was excited for it. I remember buying them on release, being super happy to play Atlanteans, and then just being very upset how the deck didn't play how I wanted it to play. And now I just go Blackwing changed exactly. And I'm not attached to identity. I'm attached to the way it plays. I'm attached to the game. And the game is no longer the same, so I kind of just not, like, I lost interest in it, which sucks, but I guess that's part of Yu-Gi-Oh! But if you ever see me not be the most hype about a deck getting support, even though if it's a deck I like, it's because of this. I've been hurt before. I don't want to be hurt again.
to grave to search an Atlantean card and can, if sent to grave for a water monster effect, revive an Atlantean monster.
I
have trust
what I
issues.
said earlier, there's a lot of powerful cards in Breakers of Shadow. They just didn't have immediate impact because of how powerful the few cards were for Pendulum. But like now that we're going through all these,
It's funny I have the same view on as Josh. It's pre-watched. Wait, does he say the same thing?
individually, yeah, there's more to it than just Pepe. It's just Pepe is so strong that these others didn't see play immediately.
Would
So I
completely
forgot
revamp Atlantean,
that they
or
were
more
also
accurately
here.
Merlantean, into a rogue level contender for the current metagame, as by sending Dragoons with his
We got a contrarian in chat. Radiant Mirror Force is the best Mirror Force. They just want to be noticed.
effect, you could not only search another Dragoons, but also search for a
I have Yu-Gi-Oh! Trauma. Yeah.
mermail to pair with it, being the perfect starter for the strategy. Lastly would be 2 new Exceeds in the OCG import slots that would revitalize the
Neptabyss was
staple
so
rank
ahead of
one
its
pool.
time. Neptabyss was very ahead of its time. And the funny thing is, even back in the day, we realized how weird it was to make a card like that, right? When like one card does everything for a deck, and that one card does so much, we realized, or I feel like I thought of it that way, that was a problematic way of designing a deck, because you would play it and you would like.
Oh, okay. So if this is what you're referring to, we actually have different reasons for not liking the card, right? Mine is that the identity changed, unless he talks about that. His is he doesn't like the card design overall, which I'll get behind, sure, but I guess for me, I never thought of it that way. For me, I was more sad to see the identity of Atlantean Mermail kind of stripped away and turned into whatever the fuck it is now.
If you had access
And
to
the
it, your
Rip
deck was
Turbo.
unstoppable, which never felt good when you were playing against it. And then when you didn't have
Neptabyss
it, your
is
deck just felt
Mermail
like you were playing
Circular.
a deck from 5 years ago, which was pretty awful, right? So I felt like it
Josh loves Mermails too, but hates Neptabyss. I think that's a common conception for most players who played Mermails from the 2012 to the 2014 range, because the deck is not the same deck afterwards. It's like there was hope that it'd be revitalized, but it's not the same thing. It's Toad Turbo. Yeah, Toad wasn't out at the time, so I guess that's why it's not in my mind. But for me, it was like, aha, Moulin Glacier, ha ha ha, eat shit, idiot. Like that's all it felt like.
it was one of the, I mean, it's not the earliest example of a one card combo being introduced, but it's like, it is one example, and I feel like it wasn't overall that well received, right? Like, because I loved Mermail before Neptabyss, one of my favorite decks of all time. 2012, 13, 14 Mermail versions, definitely up there in my favorite decks of all time. Post Neptabyss, I didn't like the deck anymore. Like post Neptabyss, I'm not a fan of Mermail in Atlantean decks anymore at all, in any format. They never were meta again, but even if they were going to be meta, I just didn't like how the deck played once that card
and this is why people ask me if I'm excited for the new cards coming out for Mermail in Rage of the Abyss, and I'm kind of just shrugging. I'm like, I don't know, man, that deck is dead to me. Like, it's not the same anymore. I'll probably revisit it for a little bit, but like, I don't know, like, playing a deck just to play a deck. Like, if Crystal Beast lost its identity, I wouldn't play it. Especially why I don't play Conclave Control. The reason I love Crystal Beast is not for the sake of playing Crystal Beast and saying I'm Jesse. It's because I actually genuinely enjoy the Crystal Beast cards. And Conclave Control is not the same deck as the combo versions that I play. So I don't want to sit there and play this trap deck. I want to sit there and combo off with my fucking Crystal cards, my Golden Rules, my Rainbow Bridge of the Hearts, and just Dougie on my opponent. Not fucking sit there with Conclave and Crystal Miracle.
right? I liked how the deck played before Neptabyss. I didn't like how it was played after, at all.
in extremely different ways. Traptrix Rafflesia is unaffected by traps while she has
Forgot about that. This was a good card.
materials and could attach to send a trap hole from deck to grave when its effects would be able to be applied to trigger that effect. Rafflesia would become an instant staple rank 4 in the format in large part thanks to Treacherous Trap Hole, as her effect became a
That
true
was a
monster pop
powerful
on a quick
thing
effect.
to
I'm a
So
fan
used
of
for
this.
that,
That's
as well as
cool.
for applying bottomless after the fact. The other and far more interesting application card was Cyber
Unchained was a good example of legacy port that kept the identity. Yeah. You want cards that do the same thing but better, because that increases the consistency and increases the ceiling. And that's what Unchained kind of did. And then they added some extra stuff to help it kind of play and tie in. So, yeah. But the thing is, like, that also could technically be wrong. I don't want to speak on behalf of Unchained players, because I was never an Unchained player. So if Unchained players feel differently about that, like OG Unchained players, then perhaps I'm being obtuse. But at least my perspective is that it holds an identity, a core identity, better than the Mermail deck does.
Dragon Infinity, a light locked 3 material rank 6 that can also summon itself over Cyber Dragon Nova, gains 200 attack for each material, can suck up an attack position monster on either field as material once per turn.
I always thought this
and
card
can
was
catch one for
overrated.
an Omni negate.
You have to put
You
so
may
much
be
into
remembering
this,
what
just
I
one
said right at
negate.
the start of this, and no, I did not misspeak. Cyber Dragon Infinity would be a staple piece of the rank 4 toolbox due to a monster we've mentioned before in our series, being Tellarknight Ptolemaeus, who could, for the cost of detaching 3 materials, rank itself up into any light rank 5, which just so happens to allow access to Cyber Dragon Nova, which in turn gives access to Infinity. This would be
It seems like such a big investment compared to today, but like, the Omnis were crazy back then, dude.
It just always felt worse. Okay, so the cards that I felt like were always better to summon were I guess Mission and Master Duel instead of Dueling Book. Evil Swarm Nightmare was the biggest one that I feel like was slept on at the start of the format, but was like kind of gross. So it's 2 darks, which you need to kind of go out a little bit out of your way to get, but it's not too hard. And that is that when you summon a monster, you can book one. You summon some level 4 monsters, you have the ability to, but like you could just end on like the Draco Slayer monsters, which were better follow up, and then go Nightmare plus counter traps plus like Rafflesia. And I felt like that was just better. Like I don't know, like Rafflesia is better, Nightmare is better, both like less bodies. I like the card was not bad. Don't get me wrong, you always played it, but like it felt like people pushed this card out way more often than you really needed to, when it wasn't always the best play.
You put 3 bodies into an Omni Negate, that shit was worth it.
Become an integral part of any rank 4 focus deck.
I like how it's
reliably
just
put up free materials,
contrary
which in
in
case you
there.
didn't know was about.
That's okay. We have many of the same
comment.
opinions. We're allowed to have different opinions on some stuff. We can't just be clones of the same thing. Otherwise, what fun is that, right? Like, I can't contribute anything if we have the same thoughts about every topic.
A tier 0 format with YCS Sydney would be the first event of the year on January 16th.
Is this the first Sydney? This might be the first YCS Sydney. If this is the one that Karakuri won. My first Sydney was 2019, though.
Pepe was already poising itself as the new mega threat, taking 90% of the known top cut. With all of the new tools from Bosch, the deck was an absolute menace, as you could set up any number of various turn 1 setups.
What is Palomuro doing there?
They made Nappies.
Is that like a search target for King of the Feral
to
Imp?
make Nappies.
The deck ranging from Rafflesia to Infinity to Dweller to even Nightmare. Not to mention the follow-up you had with options like Castel, Ignis or
Nappies,
Prominence,
yeah.
or Trapeze Magician. At this stage, there were so many different options for the strategy that practically every list would be running something different. Some would run Rescue Rabbit as a way to access Master and Vector for Exceed plays and Dynastor power lines. Some would run Odd One of Tex and the Reptile lines for searching with
Was Foolish good in this deck? I don't remember. This was no Ariadne in here.
King of the Feral Imps, such as Palomuro for access to Naturia Beast with Hat Trigger, or Mask Chameleon to access Ignis or Prominence with a Graved Master
And then Psyblocker would check Nappies.
or Vector.
Check,
And I'm sure
would be
many
super
others
shit.
that were sadly not known due to the loss in most of this event's coverage. But we'll talk more about these soon. Yahweh Zhang would take the event on Pepe.
Oh, this
using
one
a very
Yahweh
standard list
won,
with no
okay.
particular standouts in deck composition.
It's interesting that in these first couple of lists, people didn't play the Solemn cards. Because the way I remember it, I'm sure we're going to talk about the event, because YCS Prague 2016, I remember everyone playing Solemns in Pepe.
Was
Like, it
Prague
just-
and Pepe? So I guess back then I was a lot more centric around my TCG sphere in North America, right? I didn't even know there was. I didn't remember Sydney. I don't remember Prague. I remember Atlanta, and the Solemns were popular. They weren't like in every deck, but they were popular.
Hey, you go first, you search Solemns, you win the game. Kind of format. At least in my head, it's like that. I guess we're going to check out some lists in a moment and see if it actually was in all of those lists, but I remember it being that way.
Or interesting text, just utilizing the insanely consistent menace. An extremely interesting part of the Pepe mirror match that should be discussed here is the interactions of Wavering Eyes, as timing your usage of the spell was critical for winning the mirror. The
Interesting
option
is
had
one
always
way to
been
say
weighed
it.
on whether or not to use it on turn 1
Damage
for your own scales
juggler.
to get the benefits before
Wavering,
your
chain
opponent, or to save
wavering.
it for the full 4 scales, or save it to chain
Was YCS Prague 2016 the controversial one? It's the one with 2 normal summons in the final in one turn, if you mean that. I don't know if that's super controversial
remember that
or
either.
anything. I think it was that one, yeah.
to your opponent's copy to ensure yours landed first. This was also complicated even further by the inclusion of Perform Mage Damage Juggler, which could actually be discarded to completely negate Wavering Eyes due to the 1-pop effect being a burn effect, which only added to the mind game complexity of the mirror. The only non-Pepe deck that was known that topped here in the Tier 0C was Kozmo Artifact, being one of the first major appearances
No extra, no
as
side,
a
fair
way to
enough.
block the massive pendulum floodback swing. Able to
Scythe,
summon the old-fashioned way to set them, or
Artifact,
with Silkrider
Scythe.
popping it off of a pilot tag out. This event would set the stage for the absolute dominance of Pepe on the format, but it seemed something else was just on the horizon, with the structure deck releasing 2 weeks later bringing forward a revolutionary idea for structure decks that would change their design forever.
This was a very, very good structure deck. They need to make more like this.
Release date
I am not like the hugest Monarch fan, but it can be fun outside our domain. And I think it was good for the health of the game, but yeah.
Such a
January
good
29th,
structure deck, dude.
2016. Set type,
so
structure
strong,
deck.
man.
Major strategies, Monarch. Impact, Stun or Swarm, you decide. Emperor of Darkness in the OCG was the beginning of a new structure deck series known as Structure Deck R, which took the concept of an older structure deck, in this case the Dark Emperor, or Advent of the Emperor in the
I feel like this is another issue or another matter of I love OG Monarchs. I love Monarchs. I really do. Like all the OG Monarch decks, like any Monarch control deck pre-2010, any like Frog Monarch,
not
that
remotely
kind of
the
stuff,
same
I
deck.
love them. With this structure deck, I didn't like it that much anymore. Not just because of the floodgating aspect, but also just because of the bricking aspect. It just felt like
Yeah, the deck was
If I had
bricky,
to
but
put it into-
this is not. It doesn't feel like an old Monarch deck.
words, I would say like they tried to modernize the concept of Monarchs into like 2016, which they have always been super slow, control-y kind of cards, right? Which is it was starting to get to the point where that wasn't really appropriate anymore, right? Like you wouldn't really wait a turn to set up one tribute summon and that was it, right? So they had to turn it into a deck that had the potential to go faster and more powerful. So it felt like, it didn't feel like OG Monarchs. It felt like more like a combo approach to the deck, even though it was technically still Monarchs and technically still tribute summons, but like not really, right? Like it's, yeah, but it's fine. It's I just didn't like the bricky aspect about the deck. That because that was definitely in the formats where Monarch was good and playable. It was always, I feel like, the brickiest out of the decks, but it was always solid.
OCG, and revitalizing the idea into an entirely new design space aimed at making
But
the previous
Pantheism
structure
draws too.
viable in the
Pantheism
current
is
meta
a really
landscape.
cool
This
card.
concept's first outing would be quite the impactful one, revitalizing the Monarch strategy with a number of new additions. Idea and Eidos would be new low-level additions, with Idea on summon specialing an 800,000 from your deck, and when sent to grave returns a banished Monarch spell trap to hand, and Eidos giving you an additional tribute summon the turn summon, and can be banished.
So both of these are obviously crazy, but they basically completely remove the idea of what it meant to play an OG Monarch deck, where you basically had to worry about, like, how am I going to set up my tributes in the next turn, right? Like, it was always like,
well, I mean, like,
well,
you
I guess I
always
just
had
Idea,
Soul
and it doesn't
Exchange
really
going
matter
for
that
those
I have a
type
level
cards,
8 monster in my opening
yeah.
hand, because, I mean, I just turbo it out turn 1, which there's nothing inherently wrong with that. It just didn't feel like OG Monarchs to me at the time, but it's fine.
It doesn't.
Another aspect that you guys are mentioning in chat right now is how affordable this deck was, which admittedly, that was, I think, one of the best parts about it. I think it cannot be understated how important it is to have a budget-friendly deck.
The last one, Fire King. When did this come out? Wait, what? Release date, December 8th. 9 months later. Still no new structure decks. This is a problem, I think. We just haven't got structure decks. Like, maybe some of these weren't the best, but like, we need structure decks, I feel like. Where's our Soul Burners? Endymion was good. Where's the Shadal one, right? Like, Blue Eyes, it's not announced though, even. Like, for all we know, it gets imported into a pack, and then there's just no structure deck again. They haven't said anything about it? Nope. The trap deck structure, I don't like the structure deck, but the fact that people do is still fantastic. There's the Albaz one, which is a huge deal. I can't believe this is a product line they're dropping. Or if they're not dropping, they're doing differently. Like, I understand slowing it down, but Zero? No bueno. He's not bueno. Yeah. Sad.
In the format of Yu-Gi-Oh! Even if it isn't the best deck, it doesn't even have to be like tier 1. As long as it's like playable and you can realistically do well at an event with a budget option, I think that's super important. I think it's super, super important.
Yeah, like I'll shit on
there
Salad,
is a budget option.
It was
in general.
necessary.
I think they should really make a. They should have a. I feel like they should do a better job at making sure that's always the case. Like, not the best deck doesn't have to be cheap. Even though it would be nice.
There needs
course,
to be
like,
an option that can at least keep up.
At least give.
Have you already discussed the tin? We discussed it for like we discussed it for like 20 minutes. You were thoroughly disappointed, so we moved on.
These people an option, right? Like, it doesn't have to be the best or top tier deck.
It's in non-American date format, so it's been over a year since last structure deck. I'll let you in on a secret. I'm not American. It came out in December, the Fire King structure deck. It's not been over a year. Still not an excuse, but yeah.
But like, at least like you can top an event with a budget thing that isn't just like Runic Stun or something, right?
From grave to summon an 800,000 from
Runic
grave. Both of these will
Stun.
fuel the new bosses of Aether and Erebus, with both being able to be
Tenpai is budget, yeah, and I think Tenpai is healthy for the game in that aspect. I think it's good that Tenpai gives people an option
Tenpai is
to
incredibly
that don't
new
want to
friendly,
spend the
which I
money
think
on
is
the
great.
Fiendsmith engine. There are things about Tenpai that I don't like. And there were also things about the Monarch deck in 2016 that I didn't like, right? The floodgate aspect of it. Or
Domain,
but you can't deny that having
Eruption,
a affordable deck in the
Breaking.
format, it boosts the popularity of Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, it's important. It's good, I think.
Any single tribute summoned monster. Aether able to tribute summon itself in the opponent's main phase by
The
banishing a
extra deck
Monarch
for Tenpai ain't cheap. I'm not saying it's a cheap deck. I'm just saying it's
I'll
way
try
more
and Dragon
affordable
Reaper,
than
hopefully
everything
makes a
else in the
difference.
game right now.
spell trap from grave, and able to summon a
Like, you don't have to be
24,000 from deck by
nitpicky about
dumping
it.
2 Monarch spell traps from deck to grave.
any noob up or any new upcoming decks you think are noob friendly? I haven't been playing as much TCG lately because I've really been focused on masterduel worlds. It's something I need to do. I need to just shut down. I need to sit down and just read a bunch of cards and get more caught up. It's part of why I haven't done more content on the Patreon and I haven't scheduled stuff because I need to kind of just catch up, right? Like I am behind. I feel like if you put me into a field with TCG players, the fact I won Sacramento is a literal miracle. I do not think I had any right to win that. I feel like it's behind everyone else. You could see in the finals. I didn't know Necroquip Princess did. Like, I tested for nationals, but I hadn't played in a month. And now that shit's gone as well, so I don't know. And I don't want to play Snake Eye. Like, I could probably play Snake Eye, and that deck would be the best deck that I understand, but I'm just, like, so over that, obviously. The rank 4 deck seems good to get your hands around. we read those cards on stream, and I vaguely remember what they do, but also like if you quizzed me on what the deck does, I would tell you spam ring 4, and that's all I could really tell you. So like, I can't like give proper assessments right now.
Tribute Summon, and Erebus able to dump 2 Monarch spell traps on Tribute Summon to spin away a card from hand, grave, or field the opponent controls, and able to discard a Monarch spell trap while engraved to recur back a 2400 or higher attack and 1000 defense monster in.
Every single deck profile from like this era in the extra deck Monarch deck would play Volcasaurus in the extra deck. So if you aren't familiar with Volcasaurus, I'll show you guys. This card, which is generic rank 5, so you can make it with the Prime Monarch, which is with a trap that revives itself in Monarchs. And you can pop a card your opponent controls, and if it's and then to destroy that monster and then burn equal to the monster's attack. And Erebus adds back anything with 2400 or more attack and exactly 1000 defense. So everybody's favorite combo to mention in the deck profile is like, well, this is so cool. Look, I can add back Volcasaurus. And in reality, that's a play you did maybe once every 3 tournaments. So like, but everyone mentioned it because it made them look smart. It was really funny.
Grave. The Monarch spell traps would also see an overhaul in Pantheism, which discards a Monarch spell trap to draw 2, that can be banished from grave to reveal 3 Monarch spell traps in deck to have the opponent pick 1 to add to your hand. The Prime Monarch, a continuous trap that can shuffle 2 Monarch spell traps from grave back into deck to draw 1, and can, while in grave, banish a Monarch spell trap to revive itself as a level 5 light fairy. And Domain, a field spell that boosts your tribute summon monsters by 800 while attacking, can reduce a 20.
Basically, super cool concept. This entire deck. One, I would have
pinpoint the problem. Very cool. Very cool. Floodgate. Floodgate.
would have made one small change personally to it. I would have made it a little more consistent and just not have a floodgate effect on the field spell. That would have been it, right? And I don't know if Monarch's Erupt was already out or if it also released in the structure also fuck Monarch's Erupt. But like Domain, I feel like Domain should have been a consistent. I would not have minded if Domain was more like a modern field spell where on activation it adds a Monarch or something, right? Instead of having the floodgate effect. That's what I would have liked it to do, basically. Like, give the deck more consistency, but remove the floodgate.
Primitive planet of the true Monarchs.
Aspect, and the deck would have been cool. Because the grind games that Monarch played are actually super cool.
Yeah,
like,
they're interesting.
The grindy aspect to this deck, the grind game that this deck has, it's insane. And it's also not even, it's fun to play against, is the thing.
Yeah,
as long as you're not constantly locked out of your extra deck, and you have to interact with their tributing, like their Stormforth and Aether and Erebus kind of stuff, as long as you can play the game, it's a fun game. Like, it's completely fine. It's just like when you're locked out of your extra deck, it's annoying.
28 1000s level by 2 in hand for the turn, dropping their tribute summon requirement by 1, and while you have no cards in your extra deck and a tribute summon monster on the field, locks the opponent from special summoning a monster from the extra deck. To say this wave would make Monarch's meta was an understatement, seeing the deck's surge in playability with new draw and search tools, new board flood.
I mean, it took until Pepe died for it to really see play, but yeah.
Being a house of a card thanks to being able to summon Curaz with her effect, which is one of the only 2400 Monarchs that does something on special summon. Popping 2 cards on
Monarch with extra would have been so cool. I mean, what do you mean would have? That was a legit version of the deck, right? And I think that shows that you could have made the deck good without giving it floodgates, because there was a meta-relevant version of the deck that played an extra deck. There were people, and at some points, I'm sure it was the more popular version of the deck too, right? The Brilliant
for the NWCQ was definitely more powerful to play the extra deck cards.
Deck Monarch, like that was a meta deck. It was a meta deck, and I think at most parts it was even preferred over Domain Monarch. So they could have made this deck good, and they did without giving it a floodgate. That could have been a thing, right? Or should have probably been the only way to play Monarchs, because they could have made it like it was fine.
And giving their
it wasn't necessary to give it floodgates.
Domain, though, would cause some very heavy concessions in the base build as it was designed, as giving up your extra deck not only reduces your options in any scenario, but also flags to your opponent exactly what deck you are playing. When starting a match, the count for your extra deck is public knowledge prior to deciding who goes first or second, which in turn tells the opponent prior to the game starting that you are definitely...
Dude, who remembers the cringe debates about whether it's legal or not to just have like a stack of tokens next to your thingy without telling your opponent, and they just assume it's your extra deck, but it's not. And it's like, dude...
Yep.
It's so weird. Like, the amount of stories that I heard, it didn't happen to me personally, but the amount of times someone told me like, oh, mid-game, my opponent activates Domain. I'm like, but I thought you have an extra deck. They're like, no, that's just 15 tokens. I also think no one got through with it. I don't think it worked. I think people just got game losses for that shit, like, constantly, if you were doing that. I don't remember exactly because it never happened to me, but I think it just wasn't allowed. And, yeah, cringe.
On a Domain deck.
Yu-Gi-Oh players never beating the sharking allegations. Bro, Yu-Gi-Oh players can be great, but there are the stinkers in the bunch, for sure.
Or a way to quickly tribute summon one of the new bosses, the deck's options were heavily limited, and with no extra deck to back it up, that could leave one dead in the water. That isn't to say the deck wasn't powerful, as it was, being one of the only strategies that could actually compete with Pepe in its hostile takeover, just not on a consistent basis. But there was another version of Monarch waiting below the surface that would arise within a few months that would be a far more powerful threat than Domain builds, in almost every aspect. YCS Atlanta would be held a week later on February 6th, and...
Okay, I scrubbed this event. But you see, look, like, these aren't really playable.
29.
That's right. Pepe had hit the most representation in a top 32 cut a deck had ever had at this point in history, and it was clear to see why. Pendulum as a strategy in general was rampaging.
Yeah, they're the solemns.
Clearly been hit. Seeing so many viable options.
There are the solemns. They have arrived
a couple weeks ago, alongside some new ones. Guiding Ariadne would be a tech that saw success thanks.
You want to see something crazy? Look how many Maxx's are in the side deck. There's 0 in the main and 2 in the side. But in reality, the problem with Maxx in this meta is if you Maxx'd them, pen summoning counts as 1 summon, so you would just make like double counter trap infinity and like, or not infinity's probably worse, but like nightmare Rafflesia and like 3 summons. So it would be like Maxx just didn't even do enough.
The searching for Solemn Strike or Warning when popped by Luster Pendulum or Wavering Eyes, giving another layer to the end board of the rank 4 toolbox. Dark Pepe would also be a variant that rose here thanks to Armageddon Knight and Zephyros the Elite, as you could bounce your Luster Pendulum back with Zephyros to not only enable rank 4s, but also to get additional Luster pops with cards like Plush Fire, pushing the swarming even further. Jose Lagunas would take the event on Pepe, notably opting to not load up on any fancy techs, but rather hand traps like Valor and Maxx to give himself a fighting chance going second.
I mean, we're still playing the Solemns. They're just in the side deck. I guess you guys can't see them right now, but like that was basically the debate, at least the way I remember it. The debate was, do you main deck the Solemns and Ariadne, or do you just side deck them? I guess there's no Ariadne to search them, but you still play them.
Monarch would manage to take 2 top spots here, but falling completely out by top 16, with Majesty's Team being the big counter pick for various swarming effects while Domain blocked the spam outs. Kozmo would also squeak in a single top spot here, notably playing Anti-Spell in the main to potentially block out the Pendulum's.
Anti-Spell. Dude,
you see, the only way to not play Pepe, it's like in other 2-0 formats, you just have to be a terrorist.
People realized Anti-Spell was just the best floodgate possible against pendulums. Everyone who played at that time went through the motion of, wait, can you set pendulum scales? And then they would find out the answer and be like, no, you just can't. You just literally can't play under Anti-Spell. Everyone's like, wait, what? How is that fine? Why is that a thing? Why is that a thing? And then we just played. We just didn't question it anymore. We just put Anti-Spell into our decks to beat every single pendulum deck out there, and no one cared. You would have really thought, this is how you can tell how much they sometimes are not willing to ban floodgates, because I feel like Anti-Spell, in order to even boost their newest mechanic, it would have made so much sense to ban Anti-Spell, right? Like it would have been such a everyone expected it.
They just love floodgates, man.
Scales, as pendulums cannot be set at all, locking the zone from being used. It was clear that Pepe was a menace and needed to be dealt with, and interestingly enough, Konami would deal with it in the most bizarre way we've seen yet. Back on February 4th, Konami would release a blog post to their official site, notably including what they were referring to as an adjusted list that took effect directly following YCS Atlanta on February 8th. This list would be enforced for all official events at the regional level and above, but leave it as optional for all card shops, allowing them to keep the previous list without losing their OTS status. The adjusted list would make 6 hits in total, being 3 bans and 3 limits, all targeted
at Pepe. Pretty big.
Literally bring me back to a time where they do this. I think it cannot be understated how good of a decision it is to deviate from your normal ban list schedule because you realized something you've published or released is too powerful. That is something we need. We need that. That is,
was this posted before?
Because mistakes in card design happen. Sometimes you make a card that's too powerful.
When was this streamed live on the 20th of August? This is before
There's nothing wrong with
if we
saying,
found out the ban
we
list.
kind of messed up on that card. Let's just go back on it. Like that's a good thing to do. It's a reasonable thing to do. Why have we stopped doing that?
Banning Plush Fire, Damage Juggler, and Ptolemaeus, and limiting Skullcrobat Joker, Monkey Board, and Luster Pendulum. This was a massive kneecap to the strategy, as the Performage engine.
If your card shop did that, you'd never go back. I get it because because think about it this way, right? Like the reason people would be mad is think if you spend like $100-something each on your copies of these cards, and then the deck is no longer that playable, then you kind of just like neg a shit ton of money, right? Like it does suck. So I understand, and it's a stupid reason because getting to play the game with the deck that's broken just to not have fun is kind of stupid. But like, I also get it. It should never happen to begin with, and which is why it's still just a band-aid on the problem and not like a real solution because people still got effed. Your card shop would do a vote for what's just to play with. Yeah, I think a lot of locals would do that.
As well as the death of Infinity's usage in rank 4 decks. However, this would not be the end of Pendulum, as the strategy was still left with plenty of options to rebuild with, and that would be helped along by the announcement of an errata to Pendulum Sorcerer, correcting its mistranslation and now letting it search for all cards popped rather than just monsters, fixing its major error. This would leave the game in completely uncharted.
I'm pretty sure, by the way, that we already played with the errata version before that. Because I'm not even aware that existed. I'm pretty sure the deck could already do that in these events, but I might be wrong because I didn't play in any of these YCSs. But I think the deck already did that. At least in Europe, I never remember it being a thing like that. Maybe I just forgot.
territory, with the vast majority of shops adopting the adjusted list immediately due to it dealing with Pepe's oppression, with only a handful not adopting it, leaving most to question why the list was done this way at all, leaving the entire community to watch the next couple of set releases and events to see what direction the game would take.
Ooh, Phantom Knights.
I love this set. Wing Raiders.
Wing Raiders. Release date, February 12th, 2016. Set type, deck building set.
I mean, just
Strategies,
Phantom Knights are really
Phantom Knight,
cool.
Raid Raptor, Super Quant. Impact, a new hybrid threat will rise. Wing Raiders would be the third attempt at bringing the deck building set concept to the masses, and it would not disappoint, bringing 2 new archetypes and the main block of support needed for an existing one. Raid Raptor was the existing archetype, debuting back in Secrets of Eternity, consisting of a series of level 4
Yeah, they barely debuted. Like, that deck was not a real deck.
Ranking up into their more impressive bosses with rank up magic spells. Tribute Lanius can dump a Raid Raptor card from deck to turn summon, and search as a rank up magic in main phase 2 if it destroyed something in battle that turn. Last tricks.
Nah. We like birds here. Certain birds we may dislike, but
itself in a Raid
birds
Raptor
are fine.
Have a spell or trap on field or engrave, and contribute itself to summon a Raid Raptor Exceed from extra deck with its effects negated, returning it.
We're ornithologists.
Attached to search a level 4 Darkwing Beast. Satellite Cannon Falcon is a rank 6 that can feather duster the opponent if summoned with a Raid Raptor monster. Blocks responding to that effect, and can detach to drop an opponent by 800 attack for every Raid Raptor engrave. Call can summon a Raid Raptor with
Raid Raptor is cool. Every single one of you, the only reason why you're saying Raid Raptors are cool is because they were never meta. I'll guaranteed we have one Raid Raptor meta. You guys know what I mean. You guys immediately know what I mean. 2 days in, you are sick of it. I promise.
Field from hand or deck, and Soul Shade Force can pay
they look cool. I never thought I never said they didn't look cool. Sure.
I have a Raid Raptor Exceed, then rank it up into a Raid Raptor.
That's not what it's about.
Higher. Well, absolutely interesting support. Easily the most eye-catching of the support for general use was Force Tricks, as its search was fairly generic in the current meta. Sephiroth. But in Archetype, the talking point was absolutely Soul Shade Force, being the best rank up magic the Archetype had seen thus far.
I mean, I get it. I'm not the biggest fan of Raid Raptors. I don't hate it though.
There's only 2 options, guys.
Test it.
Someone at Konami either really loves birds, and that's why they put the most powerful cringe effects on it, or they really hate birds, that's why they put cringe effects on them. There's no in between. Someone in the world is responsible for what is going on with birds and Yu-Gi-Oh! But you're not ready for that discussion yet.
Still leave Raid Raptor on the fringes of rogue play, barely scratching the surface. Phantom Knight was a series of haunted articles of clothing, with each having an effect that banished themselves from grave for some
Phantom Knights are so awesome.
Ancient Cloak on field can boost a dark by 800 by swapping itself to defense, and can banish itself from grave to search of the Phantom Knights card, which is effectively the monster line. Silent Boots can special summon itself from hand if you control a Phantom Knight, and can banish itself from grave to search a Phantom Knight spell trap, and Ragged Gloves gives a Dark Exceed made with it 1000 attack, and can banish itself from grave to dump a Phantom Knights card from deck to grave. The payoff for these is Break Sword, a rank 3 that can detach one to pop a card on each field, and if destroyed can revive 2 Phantom Knights at the same level, boosting their levels by 1 each. Meant to tie in their anime users' boss monster of Dark Rebellion Exceeds Dragon from new challengers. Their traps fall into 2 categories, those that summon themselves as monsters, and those that can be banished from grave to revive a Phantom Knights monster, with Fogblade able to negate a monster's effect on field and blocking it from attacking or being attacked.
Sword I missed these.
800 and destroying itself to protect its monster, and
Sword was unplayable. Wing was a one of that I played. I liked it.
With this support, Phantom Knights would immediately see experimentation as a rank 3 strategy, with the main line giving access to rank 3s and Fogblade.
Good old Dante.
A searchable fiendish chain, though its true home in the meta will be discovered shortly after. Lastly were the Super Quants, a series of Power Ranger-inspired monsters and their mechs, each being a different level and having a corresponding exceed of the same rank. Red Layer is level 5, can special summon itself if you control no monsters, recurs a Super Quant card on summon, and if sent to grave revives a Super Quant other than itself. Green Layer is level 4, summons a Super Quant from hand when summoned, and when sent to grave can discard a Super Quant to draw a card. And Blue Layer is a level 3, able to search a Super Quant on
summon. Wow, I never realized how broken Red Layer was. As far as like multiple effects, Red Layer is kind of crazy. If this card is sent to the grave, you can charge a Super Quant in your grave, except Red Layer summon it. I did not know it had that ability. Red Layer is like ridiculous. This card is just like a +2 with no normal summon committed. This is crazy card. Blue and green were very whatever though.
Can shuffle back 3 Super Quants from grave. Their mechs all share an effect to attach a Super Quantum monster from hand.
I think Grand Pulse a lot. That's about
and
it.
Cannot attack unless they have material. With Grand Pulse able to detach to pop a spell trap, Ouroboros able to detach to flip a monster on field face down, and Magna Liger able to detach to pop a monster. With all 3 able to use these effects as quick effects if their corresponding Super Quantum is attached. Super Quantal Fairy Alphon is the enabler for the deck, able to make all monsters you control levels match that of a Super Quant on field, and contribute itself to reveal 3 different Super Quant monsters in deck, then have the opponent pick one at random to special summon to the field while putting the others in grave. Their field spell Magna Carrier can discard a card to exceed summon a Super Quant.
You just need to hit Red Layer, right?
Any number of times in a turn. But more importantly, if you have all 3 Mech Beast Exceeds on field or in grave, can send itself to grave to use all 3 as material to exceed summon Super Quantal Mech King Great Magnus, who floats into the 3 mechs when sent to grave and gains effects based on how many materials it has, with 2 or more letting it detach to quick effects spin a card back into deck.
This deck was like rogue playable for a bit. It's a deck I don't know very well, truthfully, so like I've had a few people request for me to play this on the channel. I just never have because I don't know it that well, but I could try and learn it, I guess.
Meaning you'd have at least 4 materials with that exceed still having its pilot. Super Quant would be a rogue level strategy almost immediately on release, but unfortunately suffered in the meta primarily thanks thanks to the kaijus already being in most players' main or side decks. They would see play, however, as an engine for some decks, as Blue Layer was a level 3 psychic, making it accessible with emergency teleport, being yet another rank 3 enabler that could also search for Red Layer, but they'd find a more interesting home soon enough. Aside from this, Grand Pulse would also find general play as a rank 3 spell trap removal piece, seeing play in Burning Abyss and any other rank 3 deck for that utility. YCS Prague would follow 2 weeks later, and very notably was the first YCS under the new adjusted list, seeing a widespread of decks in the meta.
Oh yeah, this one was already post-adjusted list. So it wasn't a tier 0 Pepe anymore, but it was at that one we still all did Ariadne, set strikes and stuff like that.
Following the death of Pepe, Draco Pals would be the standout of the event, adapting Pepe into a more generalized
didn't even play this
with the Draco Slayer pieces at the center of it all. Kovacic would take the
event with I remember this. People think Penned Rising. It summons a pendulum from the deck, so you could use it with the Donkey, which is whatever, or Army Knight. Right, and it summons Pen Sork, and then you set up your scales that way.
Playing a list similar to Dark Pepe lists we'd seen before, but with the hits cutting the entire performance side of the deck, focus more into the dark package of Armageddon Knight, Zephyros, and Shadal Dragon. Kozmo would make it to second place here thanks to the slow transition of the deck into Tin Can Turbo, adding in more copies of Call the Haunted and Oasis to take advantage of the grave setup provided by the still readily abusing emergency teleport for the strategy. Monarch would see a little more experimentation to their builds, with the top 4 version playing copies of Super Quantum Red Layer as
there's also another experimentation that you can do with Monarch cards. I wonder if we'd mentioned the FTK.
It's a special summonable body that can also double up as a tribute summonable monster.
I'm pretty sure
your Monarch spell traps
too.
like Domain in return.
The
top 32 spot
Royal Magical Library shit.
Utilizing Blue Layer and Ghost Ogre with emergency teleport as rank 3 enablers as well as protection with Ghost Ogre, as well as the now staple rank 3 enablers of Terratop.
Hey, what's the reason to play Blue Layer in this? Because there's no search.
It was just a 2000 defense teleport target, if I remember correctly. Oh, I think it has another effect, right? It shovels itself back. Is that what it did? I feel like there was something else. Oh, let me open up this, actually. Quantal. Blue Layer. Discard sent to the grave, charge 3 super quants in your grave, shuffle them back. Yeah, so you could just, it made sure you only had to play 1, and you could shuffle it back with teleport. So it's better than Ogre because in the grind game it wasn't dead. That's why. You also shuffle back Grand Pulse, right? Which sometimes matters. Not really, but sometimes.
Target for it, is there? E-Telly? I understand you summon it with E-Telly, guys, but you can summon any level 3 with E-Telly.
Yes, you're getting trolled by the chat.
It revives itself? What do you have to do to Super Quantal Blue Layer?
Oh, it makes Grand Pulse quick effect. I forgot about that as well.
If this card is sent to the grave, you can target up to 3 super quants in your graveyard shop. Okay, so you have infinite targets for it. Grand Pulse buff? No, that's what I thought, but they don't play Grand Pulse in this extra deck even.
Grand Pulse should have been there. Grand Pulse was very good.
There's no Grand Pulse in here. So that was not the reason. That's what I thought too. But then when I saw they didn't play it, that's why I was like, okay, well that's weird. Because why not just play like multiple copies of Ghost Ogre then or something, right? Like only because it recycles itself? I don't know. But okay.
Tom Borg. Berlantian would take a top spot here, marking its comeback into the meta, with Neptabyss making the strategy viable to play once again following the tier 0 mega threat that was keeping them out, marking itself as a viable rogue option in the newly forming metagame. Lastly, and probably most doom and gloom on the format, Chicken Game FTK cracked into the top 16, utilizing various amounts of draw spells ranging from the Chicken Game line, Monarch, and Erebus to fuel draw spells like Cards from the Sky and Trade In, to tune Table of Contents, thinning the deck with blue.
No extra deck, 3 structure decks, Live Equalizer, Magical Explosion, FTK, dude. It's not right.
Toon Dragon to facilitate the older library Magical Explosion FTK, which while not meta defining, it was still an annoyance to deal with an active and consistent FTK.
So basically, Live Equalizer makes it so that the difference between your life points and your opponent's life points needs to be at least 8,000, right? So if you actually draw your entire deck here, you're gonna give them 3,000 life points with Upstart, putting them at 11. You can pay 3,000 for Chicken Games and 3,000 for Pseudospaces copying Chicken Games, putting yourself down to 2,000, which means the difference is 9,000 if you draw all of them. And funnily enough, this is only possible because Chicken Game pays life points, right? Only because Chicken Game pays life points. If it didn't pay any life points, this FTK wouldn't work. So what is supposed to be like a cost on Chicken Game makes this possible. Because if it wasn't for paying life points, you would have to have another FTK option that probably wouldn't work. Before Chicken Game, they ran Toon World, but that wouldn't work either. The difference needs to be 8,000. You would need way more than a Toon World.
Chicken Games would also give them life points.
4 days after Prague, the Zexal Manga Volume 8 would release, bringing an extremely powerful new promo to the fold. Number S39 Utopia the Lightning is a light lock free material rank 5 that can also be overlaid onto any rank 4 Utopia monster. Stuns responses from the opponent while attacking, and can detach 2 materials while it has Utopia underneath.
This card was important.
5,000 for that battle, being an out to almost every single monster in the format that can be destroyed in battle, becoming almost instantly a staple of the rank 4 boss fight.
Yeah, very much
so. Vegas would be 2 weeks later, and while the spread would mostly hold true to the result of Prague,
I think he forgot the UDS, right? Yeah, he just forgot the UDS, I think. That Ryan Murakami won with Kozmo.
New variants to popular decks would appear here for the first time that would completely reshape the meta over the coming months. The first would be a variant of Monarchs ending in top 32 that, notably, was not playing Domain. Because of this, and the only card in the strategy
Extra deck
requiring an
Monarch.
empty extra deck being Domain, the extra deck in turn was filled to the brim with options
This
for the strategy to
list
play around.
is terrible. I don't remember this being so bad. Why is there one Aether? Okay, well, this deck got built way better later, but this version is not good.
With, most notably in rank 5 lines. The Prime
What did Escalation do again? Escalation let you tribute summon on your opponent's turn, right? I think Escalation gave you another tribute summon, I think.
Monarch, when revived from the grave, is treated as a level 5 normal light fairy, which in turn means that with 2, you can access one of the most desired rank 5s in the pool, Pleiades, in addition to other various threats, which also repopularize the Super Quants as engine pieces for Monarchs, with Blue Layer and E-Telly providing searches for Red Layer and providing tribute fodder, while Red Layer now pulls double duty from its previous role, as well as rank 5 access with Prime Monarch. This variant, known as Extra Deck Monarch, would evolve multiple times
Pay attention to the Droll plus Durandal combo as well.
over the coming months, and would cement itself as a cornerstone strategy throughout the remainder of the year through various tool additions. The other innovation would be in the topping Burning Abyss deck, as not only were they using the full suite of BA monsters like usual, in addition to
This is
This
where I
build was
wish
also
they
bad.
included names of the people that topped with these decks, because I would really be interested to hear who was the first person to top with Burning Abyss Phantom Knight.
I think this
PK
was an
Fire.
OCG deck. I feel like we knew about this
'Cause
beforehand.
I don't know who was like the first person to
Brilliant wasn't
innovate
around
that.
yet.
Being
Yeah, it
correct.
was. It came out in Core, which is the same as the Kozmo decks.
a warrior from Bosch, but they were also using a small package of Phantom Knights from Wing Raiders. As it turns out, Phantom Knight meshed incredibly well with the Burning Abyss monsters, as they provided rank 3 access to Dante, as well as utility
Rhino
from the
wasn't
grave
good in
to
this
access
deck.
tools like Fogblade.
I can't see past his sponsors, but if those aren't Terratops, I'd be shocked. I heard it's not, because Graph must be one of these, right? So it means not Terratops Akatomborg. That was so good in this deck. It's almost criminal those aren't here.
Which were insanely good for Burning Abyss. This variant, known as Phantom Knight Burning Abyss, or as it would be colloquially referred to as, would rise substantially
I
in
hated that
popularity
name.
following this
I hate
performance.
that name so much. Josh just moved over to the other side of the screen. Oh, people wanted to see the deck list. Oh, Masker Restrict. Everyone's favorite.
It would only grow more powerful with a certain import in the next
Am I
set
supposed to
release.
follow
Adam
Josh?
Borowski would take the event on Draco Pals, utilizing Guiding Ariadne with Solemn Scolding added to the counter trap line, alongside Archfiend
Hop
Eccentric
our
with
way
double duty
over.
as both removal for the opponent's pieces, as well as a way to trigger Ariadne.
I love
This
Archfiend
would lead to the year's
Eccentric.
Gold Series a week later.
Now
And
he's
this was geared up to
bigger
be
than-
one of the biggest Gold Series releases in years, thanks to a major set of reprints, as well as a certain import that would change the meta forever.
Oh god.
Oh, but that covers my chat
No.
now.
Release date, March 18th, 2016. Set type, import.
Damn it,
reprint.
Josh.
Major strategies, Cosmo,
One
Burning
second.
Abyss. Impact, price ceiling lowered. and
Beatrice,
It's very fitting we're
Beatrice.
talking about Beatrice today because it's her last day in the TCG, right? We're watching her introduction to the TCG, and later today we're gonna watch her being banned.
Infinite Gold was the third of the premium gold line in the 8th Gold
This
series
is a
overall.
mess.
Yes,
Once again
yes.
aimed at bringing a couple of OCG imports in addition to reprints that may or may not actually be relevant to the meta when they're received. This time, however, Konami pulled no punches, as not only there were reprints that were actually relevant, reprinting the entire Cosmo core, Maxx, Burning Abyss core, and various Draco Pals tools, but its imports would be some of the most impactful ones we've seen in years. Most were on the generically useful side this time.
People
with Stardust
spamming
Charge Warrior being
Copium?
a level 6 generic
They
synchro
don't
that draws
know.
one on Synchro Summon.
Josh
Number
has the
9,
inside
Show
info,
Five being
guys.
trapped,
Josh
activated with the
always
set,
knows
summons
everything.
itself as a level 4, and number 38, Hope Harbinger Dragon
Josh
Galaxy being a rank 8.
Is John Konami. You guys thought it was some hidden figure, but the best way to stay hidden is to hide in plain sight. This is your John Konami.
The spell negate, battle redirection for your other
It's criminal how
Oh,
some
sorry,
of these
he's German. Johann Konami.
cards, like specifically, I think Stardust Charge Warrior, to this day, it came out 8 years ago, by the way. Stardust Charge Warrior does not have a printing in non-gold rare. It has a premium gold print and a maximum gold print, and I think that's it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's correct because I think I checked.
monsters, and a permanent attack buff anytime an Exceed you control dies. But as good as these generic pieces were, they were not what was most focused on. Beatrice, Lady of the Eternal, was a rank 6 that could also be summoned over a Dante monster by discarding a Burning Abyss. Unable to use her effect the turn.
It had a super printing. Prove it. Where?
Maybe an AC calendar. I don't remember. If
Where was
did.
it printed in super?
Is someone gonna say in the OCG? In the OCG, yeah.
In the OCG? Shut up.
be summoned this way.
This is where I'm thankful my chat's not trolling me as much as they're trolling Josh. He gets to deal with all that bullshit.
Able to detach one to quick effect send any card from deck to grave. Burning Abyss would be the first time a TCG exclusive archetype was actually good, and because of that, when the OCG imported it to the game in mid to late 2015, in order to ensure the archetype wasn't outpaced by other archetypes already in the game, they would receive a single new piece of support, being Beatrice. This would start a trend in the OCG of getting 1 to 2 new cards for previously TCG exclusive archetypes to help boost their playability on occasion when
And they're being
importing,
better than every
which ended
card
up
we
making
have.
Burning Abyss a tier 1 threat in the OCG almost immediately on release. As for the TCG, Burning Abyss had never really left the meta since its inception, and with the recent results at Vegas, had actually undergone a
Pepe
resurgence
kinda
in
phased
PK
it out.
Fire. So Beatrice was undoubtedly poised to make an impact, giving the
Why does it not just say 2 level 6 Burning Abyss monsters?
2 level 6 Burning Abyss monsters. Did you want this card to be unplayable? Oh, on top of the other one. Okay, never mind. Okay.
The entire universe changes if that's the case, dude. I'm pretty sure we have no problems if that's just on there. And you can't convince me otherwise. Because there are none. No, there are. That's the reason why she's the rank 6.
You have to watch out writing in Josh's chat and knowing that I'll watch it. Yeah, occasionally I'll see something very sus going on over here, and I have to call it out. And then I see the name, and they're also in my chat, and I'm like, something's going on.
It's because Burning Abyss is either level 3 monsters, rank 3 monsters, or level 6 synchro/rituals. That's why she's a rank 6. Because you can summon her by overlaying Virgil and Malacoda, guys.
Virgil and Malacoda.
Strategy effectively a Laval chain, but better. YCS San Jose would be the same weekend, and though it appeared not much had changed here, a couple of small impacts for Infinite Gold would
No
be felt,
BAs,
such as the rise
really?
of popularity of Kozmo as a more budget-friendly option with a full reprinting of the
Interesting.
archetype,
Playing Kozmo. Playing Kozmo.
and the inclusion of Hope Harbinger into Draco Pals thanks to their easy access to level 8s in
Yep.
the Draco Slayer boss,
That made sense.
which would be seen in first place Alejandro Garcia's Draco Pal list. YCS Houston would be 3 weeks later, and this particular YCS would be a tipping point of sorts for the TCG at this point. By now, all of you should be aware of the hand trap Maxx, released back
Oh, what does that card do? Quick effect, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard. This turn, each time your opponent special summons a monster, immediately draw a card. You can only use this effect of Maxx once per turn. Okay.
in 2011, and how it's consistently seen side deck
Pretty
play
good.
in any format with a deck that special summoned heavily for its main game plan, but also had many formats at this point where it wasn't the greatest option due to decks being popular in the format that would get you
All my
millions of
homies hate
tops.
Maxx.
This particular event would mark the beginnings of what would be Maxx's reign over the TCG, as this format was filled to the brim with decks that all love the special summon multiple times a turn to build their end boards, which would become the norm for the game as a whole moving into later 2016 and especially into 2017, which in
Yep.
turn caused Maxx to move from its home in the sideboard into the main deck at 3 copies in almost every single top 32 list here, which would stay for the remainder of its time.
Took 5 years to become good, by the way. Okay, that's just yapping. This
Yeah.
card was already good
Copium.
in multiple formats prior to this. Everyone knew Maxx was a good card when it came out. It just had ons and offs because some formats were more explosive, some formats were less explosive. The point is, now is when every deck is
You
becoming.
don't know if there's anybody who likes
slowly but
Maxx.
surely,
I
right?
unfortunately
So,
know that's not
like,
true. I've seen
it's-
so many people bitch about
This is
Maxx.
where it actually becomes
I mean,
a problem.
like,
because
bitch
prior
about
to
Maxx not being
2016,
legal.
There's a lot of formats where Maxx was like playable into some decks and not great into others. And that's why it was sometimes main, sometimes sided, sometimes not played at all because it wasn't always great. But now is when like Maxx is good against everything.
In the TCG. As for the meta itself, while decently diverse in its spread, there were easily 4 candidates for top deck of the format, being that of Draco Pals, PK Fire, Kozmo, and Monarch.
Oh my god, dude. It's crazy that we're talking about Maxx on the day it gets unbanned. You want to see the world burn, dude.
Only showing multiple viable variants to play.
We know
PK
the
Fire was
future.
without question the talk of the event, peaking at top 4 here.
Are there any
With the
dual nuts
addition of
coming
Beatrice to the
soon?
deck, the goal was
I
now
don't think
unquestionably
so.
to reach her as fast as possible, which in turn meant that additional rank 3 engines were added to the deck. In
Yeah,
order
this looks a lot
respond
closer to a
reliably
standard
access
list.
Beatrice, specifically in that of Speedroid
I like
Paraton
three,
and Monarch, who
three
not only
Beatrice,
acted
though.
Dante for Beatrice, but also didn't take the normal summon, allowing for the summon
Dude, the reason why I never played BAPK may just be the fact that it had to play stupid to Kettenborg, dude. I hate that card so much.
of a tool like Tour Guide.
Nah,
or
you'd
Phantom
make that
Knights
card
after.
work with Livier. That shit was nice. Oh, this card was terrible. Mass Change was awful.
There would also be an odd variant to see top 32 here of BA, known as Norlaris BA, which aimed at supplying Sky Scourge Norlaris
Emrit was a Maxx apologist because he plays fucking Flu. He doesn't know the pain. Emrit's like, he's like, yeah, guys, I beat full Fire King Field plus 3 hand traps at Worlds. And then we'll ask what hand traps, and he'll be like, Maxx Ghost Mourner. Like, what? Nice hand traps versus your Flu deck. Like, why even tell us you played through 3 hand traps? Your opponent had 3 Garnets.
with Beatrice as the fairy required, allowing BA
No
to
shot.
access a board and hand nuke without much in terms of deck concessions. Infernoid would once again see top 32, still using
This deck was
Demigod as
ass.
the end boss, notably able to play through the popular Solemn Strike effectively as its summon effect can still be used from the grave. Merlantian would see another top 32, now also utilizing the Kaijus more effectively.
He's the guy in the corner of the party with like the dunce hat on. It's like they don't know I'm playing Flu. Oh my god, that's so funny. It's legitimately incredible how many people were roach friendly until they played Masterduel for a bit. Yeah, exactly, right? Like, and once they experienced it, they'll know. But players who lived through it, like Josh and I, for years, for literal years, especially 2017, 28, like 2016, 2017 were pretty rough. 2017 was really bad. People kind of saw the light.
The Interrupted Kaiju Slumber package. Andre Torres would take the event on Draco Pals, utilizing both the Ariadne package as well as the new inclusion of number 38 to the extra deck lineup, able to match up well into the mirror with those options.
Monkey
With that,
board
a new
incident.
ban list would take effect on April 11th, 2 days after Houston, and with it, we'd see the finalization of the previous adjusted list changes in addition to a number of new hits. Newly banned were Chicken Game, putting an end to the popular FTK deck, and Wavering Eyes, as the spell was not countering pendulums as was hoped, but rather was just making them stronger while also being a silver bullet in the mirror match. Newly limited were Ignister Prominence, Wisdom Eye, and Draco Face Off, all as hits to Draco Pals, Reasoning as a hit to Kozmo and Infernoid, Norden and Upstart as hits to the popular staples, Millennials, and Thousand Eyes Restrict returning from the ban section. Newly semi-limited were Emergency Teleport as I hit the Kozmo and the Super Quant engine for Monarch, and Debris and Allure returning from 1. Lastly, unlimited were Demok with an Errata,
Allure mattered for
Pagodia,
me, that was
Advanced
nice.
Ritual Art, and Crush Card Virus, all being seen as acceptable in the current environment. This list took aim at the continued success of Draco Pals far more than any other strategy in the meta, and for good reason. While the meta had diversified...
Yeah, surely one Norden is fine. Surely one Norden is fine. The second
Yeah, one of many brilliant Konami decisions.
Norden is what really gets you, right guys? The first one's okay.
Substantially, Draco Pals was still the top deck, taking just over 40% of top since
I
the
forgot it got
adjustments.
limited,
So
to be
while
honest.
it was necessary, it may have been too much considering the meta adjustments that were still being felt from the release of Beatrice. And if one card could change a deck's meta viability,
It's a great tactic from Konami, though. Start of Master Duel got into paper, probably because you don't have to include the same 9 cards every game. I think there's no question the Master Duel is very healthy for Yu-Gi-Oh!
once, it
So,
was sure to be able to do it
yeah.
a second time, as the next side set released the same week was bound to shift something in the meta, though not in a way most players would appreciate. Millennium Pack. Release date, April 15th, 2016. Set type,
Oh no,
import
it's
set.
part of
Major
Demise, let's
strategies,
go!
Cards from the original anime.
Let's
Impact,
go!
Oh, would this only just come out here? I thought it was earlier.
you go for a draw 3. Millennium Pack would be yet another side set aimed at printing niche cards from the original anime, similar to Dragons of Legend before it, and for the most part would be forgotten in the long term as just another side set in the sea of new products from the Arc 5 era. However, there were 2 specific cards that appeared on this particular set that would
Sphere
catch the eye
mode.
of the casual observer, and they would both provide
Well, it's 3, right? Sphere mode, left arm, and... Well, Jurigato, this set was actually not that bad, right? Because Jurigato was playable in Kozmo. No, this set was not 2016. This set was 2015. This set... Yeah, no, this was already out. I'm almost certain it was already out. This doesn't make sense. I thought this set was already out. 2016. What was Jurigato? And was Jurigato in this? This is not Jurigato. What the fuck am I thinking out? Oh, I'm thinking of Duels Pack Battle City. Oh, okay. I'm thinking of Duels Pack Battle City, which is Jurigato and no. Is left arm offering this set or the other set? No, Sphere mode is not Millennium Pack. Sphere mode is... Okay, I'm mixing up the 2 sets.
significant benefit to the user for a heavy cost. The first of these was left arm offering, allowing you to, if you have 2 or more cards in hand and are fine with unlock from setting cards that turn, banish your entire hand to search for any spell from your deck. While this was insane on paper, the practicality of it would be immediately suspect, as locking you
Just one worlds with it. Let's go.
from setting first meant you couldn't save any part of the hand, as it all had to go for the search, which would see some experimentation, but for the time being was too heavy a cost for the insanely powerful.
Game design wise, the problem with left arm offering is basically if it's ever worth it to play this card to search another card, that other card is probably very problematic. Is the short of
grass.
If there's ever a card that's worth searching off of left arm offering, that card has to be insane.
Upside. On the other hand, card demise could draw until you had 3 cards in hand, blocks the opponent from taking more damage that turn, locks you from special summoning for the entire turn, and discards the entire hand in the end phase. This card, though, didn't block you from setting, which
If I'll say it, if we didn't have floodgates, this card would be hella cool.
opened an entire can of worms
Paleo
on the format known as demise decks. Decks that specialize in setting a ton of back row, getting up to a
Unfortunately, we do
draw
have
3 off,
floodgates,
and then setting
so-
more, standardly paired with a strategy that could take advantage of the back row to either play a stun game more often than not, like in the case of Demise Clifford, or to fuel massive recursion plays, such as the case of Demise Kozmo. Both of these strategies would be seen as immediately meta viable thanks to the spell, though it would take a little to truly catch
People
on.
played
Clifford was
Klee?
recently out of the meta at this point, and Kozmo had a whole different thing going on with Tin Can Turbo, though soon would adapt. YCS Santiago would be 2 weeks later, and with the recent ban list changes, PK Fire would rise rapidly into its new dominant top spot.
God, the Dark Flash
Flash
shit was terrible.
Who didn't make his list public. All in all, though, this event showed us that despite the drop in performance from Draco Pals, the remainder of the meta sat unchanged, with most waiting to see if the next core set could kick up some kind of shift in the metagame as a whole. Shining Victories. Release date, May 6, 2016. Set type, core set. Major strategies, Blue Eyes, Amorphage, Lunalite. Impact, a custom-built meta break. Shining Victories
Lunalite.
would be the second core set of
This one's so
and was
funny.
pretty much built
This
as the
one's
Blue Eyes
very
set.
funny.
So let's just dive into them. Blue Eyes would see a massive overhaul to its support, seeing an entire archetype of sorts spawn around its previous pieces from the old saga of Blue Eyes structure deck
Good
back
old
in the
Blue
5
Eyes
piece era.
cards.
Dragon Spirit of White was always considered a Blue Eyes card.
Henry will tell me a lot about Klee Demise. You ask him. I think I have zero intention of doing that.
Sage with Eyes of Blue searches a level 1 light tuner on normal. Yes, that does include Valor, and can be discarded to turn an effect monster you control into a Blue Eyes monster from your deck, which conveniently triggers
Blue Eyes
some
cards
effect
were
too,
so
since it
bad,
finds an
but
effect monster.
after the ban list in September, there was nothing else that was
Still in
playable.
grave at the end of the turn, and can banish itself from grave to recur a Blue Eyes monster. Blue Eyes Twin Burst Dragon must be fused with 2 original Blue Eyes, or by sending 2 to grave from field. Can't be destroyed by battle. Can attack twice on monsters, and banishes anything it attacks but doesn't destroy. Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon is a level 9 sync.
This card is ridiculous because this card has like multiple different effects that are all aimed at countering one specific deck in the format, right? You have like, what is the format? Pendulum, neither player can special summon 2 or more monsters at the same time. Pendulum countered. When an effect of a card in the graveyard is activated, you can negate the activation. Really good against BA. During either player's turn, you contribute the synchro summoned card special, a light dragon type synchro monster from your extra deck in defense position. you have a bunch of different targets that would be good in other matchups.
Yeah,
Like, the
Azure
Graveyard
Rise
effect
was
is also really
Kozmo.
good against BA and what's it called? And Monarchs. And it's also good against Kozmo. Yeah. And then Azure Eyes is like unoutable by some decks.
That takes a tuner and a blue eyes, blocks both players from summoning multiple monsters at the same time, can negate a grave effect once per turn.
But I
and
hate
contribute itself to
Pendulum,
quick effect
so
summon
I'm
a
never
Light Dragon
mad to
synchro from
see
extra deck, except
anti-Pendulum
itself, destroying it
cards.
in the end phase. The support was honestly really solid. Sage had insane versatility in that it could search for a stone or Veiler depending on
Yeah,
your
I remember
Clee
Demise. I remember Kozmo Demise. Clee Demise, that was not something I remember that well.
Stone also meshed well with the previous Stone of Legends as an insanely valuable.
Is this the year Blue Eyes won the World Championship? It is that year, yes. Blue Eyes is going to win the World Championship in 2016. But I guess we'll get to that, and we'll talk about the
format's
reasons why
very
it did that
scuffed.
when we are there in the video.
Valuable cards of consonance target. Getting another body at the
Were
end
you
phase
there? No,
or
I was
recursion
not.
for a
I was not
piece,
at
which could
World
both be used on different turns. Spirit Dragon, though, was the major talking point, as its effect was almost handcrafted for the current meta. Blocking multiple special summons at once was a clear middle finger to Pendulums as a mechanic, and the grave negation effect seemed tailor-made for a matchup like PK Fire. But at this time, Blue Eyes would be nothing more than a rogue option. While all of this sounds good on paper, at the end of the day, you're still very heavily reliant on the original vanilla Blue Eyes, which, reminder, is a level 8 vanilla, a brick in most cases, as well as Maiden, who used to be
Blue
a
Eyes
decent option to
Alternative.
installer set up with, but now...
Wait,
Most decks might be
Alternative wasn't out
ready to
yet,
use
right?
their
Alternative
requirements
came
at
out
this stage,
that
but it doesn't
summer.
mean that they're always chomping at the bit to use them. And without a consistent way to access Spirit Dragon outside of Sage and Prey, the deck wasn't going anywhere for now. Luna Light is a series of beast warriors centered around combat and fusion summons, with each of their
All
fusions ranking
terrible.
up off of each other to get more and more powerful combat
This
effects,
deck
but
has
quite
never
literally,
really
were not worth the
lived up
investment
to what
due
it's
being easily
supposed to
dealt with
do.
before reaching the battle phase. The only notable points to the support here were Black Sheep, being a searcher for poly that was self-searchable with Tenki, and Tiger, whose revival effect being a soft once per turn meant that it could
so
theoretically
good.
provide an
Oh my
insane amount of recursion with cards that bounce it back to hand like Zephyros, but for now was left with no good targets to revive. Morphage was a series of Dragon Pendulums that all locked special summons from the extra
cringe.
deck when Pendulum summoned or flipped face up for the lower levels,
Same
and generally for the
reaction.
higher. Because
This
the
shit
block
was
require-
cancer. The Pendulum decks that would just play like 3 Amorphid Sloths and then Kurins, I wanted to throw up. Like, what a fucking fun deck. Just vomit onto the field a bunch of Floodgate level 5 monsters and I feel like, ugh, what, so terrible.
Pendulum summon for the higher levels. Slothier would see some play in decks thanks to it being a 1 tribute monster that you could search with various Pendulum search cards that you could tribute summon at the end of a combo. Performapal, Odd Eyes, Light Phoenix, and Unicorn's effects mostly
Terrible.
don't matter outside of niche circumstances where Light Phoenix stays in scale to chump block for you.
It just mattered because like it was both Perform Pal and then Odd Eyes, which like kind of mattered because Sky Iris is pretty restricted to what it could do, but I mean, yeah.
What matters here is that they are both Performapal and Odd Eyes monsters that fill both a low and high scale requirement, meaning that Sky Iris can find its way back in a Pendulum list now that it can search something relevant that isn't named Pendulum Dragon. Kozmo Dark Lady is a level 5 pilot that can pay 1,000 to negate and destroy a monster effect with a standard pilot tag out. While disappointing,
Rest in peace, James Earl Jones. Yeah, I mean, we all know this is supposed to be Darth Vader. It's not hidden very well.
Dark Lady was the only relevant new card Kozmo would receive in this wave. Dark Planet looks so cool, but it's just so bad. It did solve a massive issue in the
People
Tin Can
play
Turbo.
Dark Planet. There were versions of Kozmo that relied on Dark Planet.
Okay, people that play Dark Planet that were full coping. Like they weren't playing it because it was good. They were playing it because they wanted to play Death Star. And they were like, yippee, Death Star. I can't believe I said yippee. I'm gonna have to go fight Trish now.
Like there were like some, I think in Fire King Kozmo you could set up Dark Planet if you wanted to, and some people did that. It wasn't the optimal version, but it's
variant of the deck. That being a monster that you can
You
search
remember
with
my
Pendulum to immediately
Lunalight deck
summon
from
after,
2019 with
before
3 Into the
Tin Can gets
Void?
banished by each
Yeah,
enemy
but
draw.
it's not. It's
Dark
barely
Lady gives
Lunalight,
the
right? It's
Kozmo
just
board a
rank
monster
4
negate also
turbo.
provides them more versatility in the revival game plan, as you can negate a monster with Dark Lady without needing to waste a valuable Dark Destroyer pop on them, then potentially tack her into a Dark Destroyer later anyways. Thunder King, the Lightning Strike Kaiju, is now the strongest Kaiju at 3,300 attack.
It was
That's
tied,
It's
right?
just a better card to summon with IKS now. Angel Trumpeter is a level 4 normal tuner, meaning that for decks already experimenting with unexpected die, namely that of Pendulums, they could easily tech this in as a one-of for easier access to things like Ignis or Prominence, which
Yeah.
with a limited luster is appreciated. Lecter Pendulum, the Drake Overlord, destroys both itself and a Pendulum at the start of the damage step when battling, giving another solid Drake
I
Overlord
played
target
this
for
in
Draco face-off,
BA
which would have
because
probably
it beat Kieran. For the scale effect, I don't know why he's reading this effect. You just scale it and it's skill drain for Pendulums.
been more relevant had the spell not just been limited. Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries can, if the opponent has more monsters, discard herself to reveal an extra deck monster and banish all copies of it from
Legally
the opponent's
required
extra
to
deck.
add the
This second
emote,
edition
one
of the Ghost
emote.
Girl lineup held some interesting applications in the current metagame thanks to the extra deck standardly centralizing pull as of late. Primarily with applications against Burning Abyss specifically, as by cutting off a BA player's access to Dante, you also cut them off
Fucking hate this card. I 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 hate this card.
of Beatrice. Still, most decks in the meta were not as heavily reliant on one specific card in the extra, so for now she'd be relegated to a side deck pick.
I am not adding the
Personally,
yippee
Synchro Dragon is a
emote.
level 8 synchro requiring a tuner and a non-tuner synchro, can negate and destroy a monster using its effect once per turn and gain its attack for the turn, and if it battles a level
Oh my
5 or higher
God.
gains that monster's
Why?
attack. Talk about
This card made the one so cool BA mirror so ass. See, I can't really relate to that, but I'm sure it's like the BA PK mirror was better before.
Yeah, the BAPK mirror was incredibly intricate. It was so cool. And then they made the card that auto wins the matchup. Literally, like, it was only good turn 1 as well. After that, it didn't matter as much, but like, if your opponent opened up Reaper, it was fucked. Every other time the game was awesome, and it ruined it.
Reaper was released. I think so, yeah.
an upgrade. Crystal Wing was everything Clear Wing was and more, with the only downside being that it now requires a synchro as material to make, making it much harder to access than desired. But luckily there was already
Which one do I
Such a
add? Is
cool
it this
card,
one?
Such tiny legs. You know what? I wish you did not tell me that. I have never paid attention to that, and I will never look at Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon the same way.
Huh.
Where are your legs, dude? He has wings.
Congratulations,
not legs.
guys. Here's your yippee.
You can only have one? Bro, have you seen a dragon before? He doesn't need legs, he can fly.
Oh my god.
In the
Yeah, spam your yippies.
Dragon Synchro, Zulkin had found its target. Able to cheat out Crystal Wing decks that could make it, though none had really become known by this point. Digital Bug Corvage would be
like how we're not engaged with the video anymore, we're just engaged with this stupid ass
over rank 3 or 4
7 TV emote.
Materials. Able to detach
oh god.
Monster, able to reattach a material from grave if a monster changes battle position on field. This, interestingly enough, could rank up over Brilliant, a generic rank 3 that's already seen occasional play in Burning Abyss builds, giving the rank 3 powerhouse yet another generic tool. Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon requires 3 level 10 wing beasts to summon, or more simply, any number of the rank up magic spells being used on a rank 8 Raid Raptor is unaffected.
No, it requires waking the dragon to be destroyed by your opponent.
Card effects can detach to drop all opponents by 1,000 attack and locking them from using effects for the turn. And
he hates birds. This card was like never really a problem.
If they control no face
this didn't matter.
Skip Force lets you rank up a Raid Raptor Exceed 2 ranks and can banish itself and a Raid Raptor Engrave to revive a Raid Raptor Exceed. Between Skip Force and Soul Shave Force, Raid Raptor had seen
the bird has no legs too.
And Ultimate Falcon was finally a payoff worth ranking up too, being a towers that burned each turn or dropped.
I don't know, go back, dude. This react is taking so long. We're not even halfway through yet.
To rise up further due to the ever-present kaijus. Pre-preparation of rites can search a ritual spell from deck and a monster listed on that ritual spell from grave or deck. That's right, we buffed old rituals. Take that, neck.
It's not your fault. It's just another case of Chairman Strongest. Oh my god.
Preparation of rites is that they're feeding the bird to then sacrifice him? I've never looked at it that way. Bro, I should just not look at some of these card artworks up close.
Yeah, I've never noticed that either. Just having a feast
like
is gonna eat it.
It's ruining my image of
your childhood is ruined.
Yu-Gi-Oh sometimes. Bro, I wish I never looked at Crystal Wing's legs or what they are exactly doing on pre-preparation of rites, man.
They are eating the dogs. They are eating the local pets from the pond.
It's just an all happy little bird getting his food. I never noticed the people in the back. Like,
great design, but it still sat in a space of useless.
Oh, America's a shit show.
Were either tied to an archetype of generic
spells, such a shitty country.
Far too slow or weak to justify running in the first place. This would grow in power though, as new ritual designs would keep his particular.
They're eating our geese. Those are Canadian geese. They're ours.
It just
you can't take them.
Drowning Mirror Force completes the elemental retrains of.
There you go, gambling addict. Your favorite Mirror Force is now released.
Spinning away all attack monsters. Without question, the best payoff.
Josh is a hater for drowning.
Shockingly good quaking Mirror Force, but with the downside of needing the opponent to attack directly.
Sorry, you can't use drowning to protect your paleos, Josh. This card is fine.
Who is going to play something like this? Yeah, so Demise decks already want to draw almost entirely back row and very little to no monsters, so Drowning would fit perfectly into their lineups, which we'd see soon enough. Lastly,
a lot of decks I saw just tech one Drowning.
Search a Fire King monster or could summon a Fire Wing Beast from hand once per turn. Nuking your monsters if sent to grave or banished. While a solid card for Fire Kings, giving the deck the ability to search for its key pieces while triggering their pop effects, the strategy still wasn't going anywhere with its current game plan. However, island popping cards in the hand was such a unique effect it gives to an easily accessible field spell that it got the wheels turning. What all cards can trigger when destroyed by a card effect?
Kozmo.
That's right, you bet. Kozmo. Every single ship's floating effect did not require it to be on field first, meaning you could pop a ship in hand to float into something like
this deck,
which in turn started your
was terrible, by the way.
But it couldn't be that powerful.
This deck was absolutely terrible.
Would be held 3 weeks after Shining Victories release, and clearly a shift had happened, but in a very strange way overall.
So y'all know that I have a bad tendency of making decklist errors, right? This decklist error from this event is probably the worst one I've ever had. So at 2016 Providence, so I couldn't go to every event back then, right? Because I was 16. This was driving distance for me, so we drove here with my family and some friends, or my dad, I guess, my dad and some friends. And I get deck checked round 1. I'm playing BAPK. You don't have Farfa in your deck list. I'm like, what do you mean? Yep. Turns out my deck list didn't have Farfa on it. So I had to take the Farfas out of my deck. And I was now playing a BA deck with no Farfas. And if you've played BA in this format, especially against Domain Monarch, you'll understand it is pretty much fucking possible to beat Monarchs without Farfa. I dropped at X2. At 1-2. Sorry, 1-2. I dropped it 1-2 because I was like, yeah, this is not happening. That was pretty bad. That is probably the worst decklist error I've ever had. that was so rough.
Had taken 13 of the top 32, with at least 4 of those being a new variant in Fire King Kozmo.
This
deck was
version
ass.
of the deck was super based and super fun. I played it at Nationals.
You better say, but it's terrible.
I think I got top 8 with it. It is, and this deck is really fun.
Come on, spit it out.
You draw the chicken. If you draw the chicken, we don't talk about what happens when you draw the chicken.
This deck sucked. This deck straight up sucked. I don't know why Josh hates BA so much. If he just played BAPK in this format, maybe he wouldn't like hate it so much. And like this crap deck, this deck was a fucking pile of garbage. This deck sucked. This deck sucked so bad. It was fun. Yeah, but BK was more fun. And it was better. Monarch was fun and it was better. This deck was bricky. It was just smaller fields. It was bad in a grind game. It was just a bad deck against a good player. Oh my god, it was rough.
The biggest downside of this deck, like I hated it for that. I hated it for that, but
Just
it was
don't
so
brick.
cool if you didn't draw the chicken. Was the chicken? The chicken was the only target for Fire King Island that you played. So that, because the only reason for playing Fire King Island was to just pop one of the Cosmos in your hand so that it would float into your, basically making every single, like if you opened Island plus a big ship, it was a crazy combo about to happen.
Island had clearly made an impact on the strategy.
Everyone was bad at
Seeing a
Yu-Gi-Oh
single
back
place
then.
where it could be searched by
I didn't think people
character
were
point, but the
overall
was,
worse.
Like,
We
if
had
you had the
better
chicken in hand,
resources
you also
now.
couldn't use the island. So basically it would all fall apart. Your deck was garbage if you drew the chicken.
the full access to your
I mean,
Cosmos
it's like
without
Garnet,
the
right?
normal
In
summon
Dueling
or play
Fusion.
Telly. In addition, it was fairly simple to get the island off the board, so it wouldn't be a detriment later. As by popping a ship with it to float into Slip Rider, you could pop the island with it, which in turn would pop the slip to then
You would do like, you would do like lines where you like float into Slip Rider pops island blows up your Slip Rider brings out Straw Man brings up something from Bandit, yada yada. It's really cool.
float into a pilot to start your lines without the island potentially nuking the board later. Demise Kozmo would also see its first
Yeah,
real
this is the
success
better
playing a
version.
slim down pilot and ship spread to make room for more
I never
revival
played this
craft,
deck, but I
floodgates,
feel like this is the best way to play the deck for sure. Cosmo Joe is such a crazy card as well. It does feel a little bit inconsistent though, I guess, is the biggest problem, but yeah.
responsive
So the trick with this deck is that you can choose to resolve Card of Demise before activating Tin Can in the end phase, right? So you would go set up a Tin Can, set your hand, activate Demise, draw some more, go to set 5, have Tin Can, end phase, resolve Card of Demise, discard your hand, and then activate Tin Can to get a ship in hand. So you would end your first turn with Tin Can, 5 sets, and the ship in hand, and some ships in the graveyard as targets for erases and call. And that was a really strong setup.
Why did they play Torrential over Fire King cards? Well, they don't serve the same purpose remotely. Fire King cards are the combo, Torrential's a trap.
and of course Card of Demise, which could net massive draws for the deck given the right opening. Speaking of Demise, Clipboard would find a top spot here scoring Demise as well, also loading up on plenty
my
of Clipboard
God.
tailored floodgates like
Oh, his reaction is one of disgust. Is this like Emery's list or something? No, this is Providence, so it's not Emery. But fucking pile of nonsense.
This is why we can't have nice things, dude. Card of Demise is such a cool, grindy card if you play a deck that doesn't rely on special summoning, right? Like, your deck is slower and stuff like
It's
that.
Jobber.
All that, everything that people always want. They're like, dude, I want the game to be slower. And then, like, here's Card of Demise, which is really good in slow decks. And, okay, we're going to throw five floodgates in it. We just don't, maybe we don't deserve nice things.
and Rivalry of Warlords. In addition,
I'm surprised
to the
there's no
ground
lose one
force.
turns.
Pendulum strategies would see a wide variety of tops here, ranging from your more standard Draco
Fuck
Pals variant
Kieran.
to a couple of Majespecter variants, and even a Pendulum Magician variant. The Draco Pals and Magician variant specifically, though, were now sporting Sky Iris, not only as a way to protect the scales, but also to access the new odd-eye scales of Light Phoenix and Unicorn, rounding out their scale lines and giving yet another way to pop a pen scale. Extra deck Monarchs had overtaken their domain brethren to rule the slice of the pie
Yeah,
chart,
this
but
is a
very
more
specific
standard
development here would
version.
shift the deck
Shit
structure
was
even
fun.
more into the insane pile it was becoming. Brilliant Fusion, a card we've mentioned a couple times at this point, but not really had a reason to focus on in the meta.
This is the name of the game in 2016, is when every deck starts including bricks to make itself more powerful than other decks, right? BA is using the Speedroids, which are not intended for it, right? So like the Teketomborg is a brick in BA. Monarch start using Garnet, and a lot of other decks are using Garnet.
I love engines. I don't know why he's such a hater on this stuff. Like, Garnet's a pretty bad. Talking Town Borg isn't feasible. I'm not a
Quantum
hater.
As a target for emergency teleport. The Fire King deck is the Kozmo deck is using the Fire King Island and Chicken package, which is a terrible deck if you draw the chicken, but really good if you don't. And it introduces a lot of variance into these kind of decks because like it's so much harder to play against the Kozmo deck when they draw Island and not the chicken versus when they draw the chicken and not the Island. It's like night and day, right? So it's like I thought it was really annoying, which is one of the reasons why for the European Championship that year I chose to play a deck that I don't think had any bricks in it, which was the Pendulum deck.
A game now had a true home and purpose because the engine sent a light for part of
He
Seraphinite's
despises
requirement,
BA
he sent a
as
day
well.
out for the summon,
I
which in
know,
turn would
I don't
cycle
get
back
it.
with Monarch spell trap that's
I don't get it. I need to have a grudge match with Josh one day.
Seraphonite providing
See what show him the BA superiority.
giving access to multiple Monarch
I don't know why I
The
thought
Burning
Seraphonite
Abyss
was a light
supremacy.
piece to start using it for Pleiades. Oh yeah, it's Earth.
bodies on the first turn, which also meant that Erebus could now reliably hit twice on the
Stereotypical
first turn,
German
which is also a
obsession-
great benefit.
obsession
Arguably
with
strongest
the
part, though, was one
efficiency.
that was pretty
Yeah.
basic but effective. Seraphonite is a level 5.
I get it,
because of this,
though,
and Prime Monarch
but-
already abusing the rank 5 pool, Seraphonite could easily be turned into half a Pleiades.
Watch you brick again? I
Okay,
mean-
it's just not Pleiades, but you can still make Volcasaurus with it, or Shark Fortress, or Zenmayo, Adrius, the other ones, right? All of
the engine would become far more popular for Monarchs as the WCQ season spun up. Comet
Do you think he'll ever come back? Probably not.
Playing a mostly standard build to what we've come to expect from the strategy. Notably,
is
trimming
like-
the Ragged Gloves count down to 1.
This is what was standardized as PK Fire.
Yeah, this
or
was a
probably
very
the rest
normal
of the
list.
format. I think this list is pretty much the PK Fire list.
My list was pretty similar. I played BLS. I played Wings as well. and I played not playing Reaper in the extra deck or in the side deck is Psycho. I think I played 3 Beatrice as well though.
You're talking PK Fire. Like this is the ratios, right? This is the
I think
3
you
Twin
didn't
Twister,
need
3 Fog
Brilliant
Blade,
and
no
Corbage
other
has never come
craps.
up.
3 boots, 2 cloak, 1 gloves, speedroids, 1 tour guide, 3 scarm, and like this is the standard for burning Abyss Phantom Knights moving forward. Pretty much, right?
As it was easily the worst of the 3 Phantom Knight monsters in the main. The WCQ season would begin with Central America 2 weeks later, and for the most part, the meta had once again solidified around Monarch, Kozmo, Pendulum, and PK Fire, with multiple variants of each populating their section of the chart, most of which were known at the stage, but a new face would appear in some Monarch lists. Quick Draw Synchron had been experimented with for Monarch deck since the extra deck Monarch.
Yeah, people were playing Angel's Witch and Jack's Knight. Angel's Witch was for what? It was to play into Rivalry, I think. Jack's Knight was higher attack, but Angel's Witch might have been the correct one.
But overall, never really had a reason to be played over something like Red Lair until now. You see, its restriction on what can be synchro summoned with it only applies to things that are properly synchro summoned, meaning that by being an easily summonable level 5 tuner.
Oh, this is the quick draw version. This version was shit, but like it was funny.
Which in turn could access the new powerhouse that was Crystal Wing. This would add yet another option to the ever-growing pool of options for extra deck
Dude,
Monarch.
Monarch was so cool.
Also here
I wish this deck was playable
rather
still.
than playing the Garnet to
Not
access
in a
the
floodgate version.
Spell trap, as that line wasn't always live when playing the Brilliant out the gate like many wanted to do. Monarch would start opting for Gem Knight Lazuli and a normal monster of choice, in this case Jack's Knight, to cycle back to hand for a level 5 tribute summonable body.
Why play 1 Garnet if you can play 3?
That could trigger return. This would evolve over the next few weeks to instead search Dark Witch specifically, because she's a level 5 light fairy that you can summon under Gozen or Rivalry with Seraphinite already on the board.
Yeah.
Brandon Gonzalez would take the event on extra deck Monarchs, notably also playing Lazuli as the Brilliant Fusion target, though wasn't playing a normal with it. Oceania would be held the same.
Why? Why play Lazuli over Garnet?
Notably also playing Lazuli as the Brilliant Fusion target, though wasn't playing a normal with it. Oceania would be held the same weekend, and although we have a top 16 breakdown for this event, we don't have much else, as at this point in time, Oceania was consistently the one event that saw absolutely minimal
Bowden must have got top too. You got second, right? You got second to this.
coverage. Matthew Caseria would win the event with extra deck Monarch.
That's Bowden. All right.
Though we do not have a list for this. Interestingly enough, though it was normally frowned upon to hold
Was that Bowden?
Yeah, how did Josh not realize that sooner?
the event
with
extra deck
Necros?
Monarch, though we do not have a list for this.
Yeah, this is also there's a Hearthstone coin. Look, there's a Hearthstone coin there. What even is this picture? This is Necros with the Hearthstone coin. And it's the wrong person. Bro just grabbed a picture of Australia and said, "This is all of Australia." Bam, there, that's good enough.
Interestingly enough, though it was normally frowned upon to hold a YCS during WCQ season, YCS Origins would be held just a week after Oceanics, and a couple of new additions to the variant files would be seen here for the first time. Majespecter would be the newest deck to hop on the demise.
What is this? I don't even know what this card is. What is this?
It revives a pendulum.
Sacrificing its pendulum summon for the
It's
turn
pretty
to draw
shit.
more of the Majespecter back row, which is actually decently potent thanks to Tempest and Tornado providing really solid interruption points, on top of being able to get Majespecters out of
Pendulum
the hand for
Reborn?
demise by setting them as pen scales, similar to Demise Clifford. The other new variant was Burning Abyss Monarch, taking the extra deck Monarch game.
This is Darren Stevenson. This deck was fucking dog shit. I tested this deck for the NAWCQ. This is the brickiest pile of bullshit ever. When it pops off, it's fun and it's not that bad. But there are so many games with this deck where you look at your hand and you're like, why did I make the choices I've made to come here? What have I decided to do with my life? Because there'd be so many hands where you draw like the Prime Monarch, Kuraz, Domain, Farfa, and then like Return of the Monarchs, and you're like, great. You know, that probably isn't even the most unplayable hand you could draw. There were just so many hands that felt so Omega ass.
By now running an entire Burning Abyss core within the Monarch lineup to provide both tribute fodder in addition to Beatrice access, which set up your Monarch spell traps quite effectively. Jacob Finney would take the event on PK Fire, being a fairly standard outing for the deck at this stage. The South American WCQ would be held the same weekend, and aside from a strong showing from PK Fire compared to its competition, nothing too special would be at this event. Joaquin Petroni would take the event on Majespecter Draco Pals, which at this stage was becoming almost the default variant of Draco Pals thanks to its access to Kieran, which boosted the potency of it more significantly. Interestingly,
Cancer
there would be
card.
almost a 1 month gap between the remaining WCQs, in which time the newest Shonen Jump promo would be mailed out, being number S0.
Oh, fuck. Who loves floodgates?
I do not understand who in their right mind designed number S0 Utopic Zexel. This is... I cannot fathom how you would...
Fair and balanced card. Yeah.
Able to be overlaid onto a
They were like, you guys like Shockmaster so much? Let's give you Shockmaster too.
Attack and defense for each material, and can attach on the opponent's turn to lock them from activating cards or effects that turn. This card was a house, being able to lock the opponent effectively out of their deck.
Cordero had game. Yeah, I remember that as well.
Its summon requirement. At this stage,
Furman also punted in the finals, I'm pretty sure. In the was that finals, right? I wasn't at that event.
Search for rank up magics, meaning that the only deck that could reliably make it was one that was already playing rank ups in the first place. Raid Raptor would adopt this boss in their
Okay.
lineup quite easily thanks to already being chock full of level 4 stacks
That's
Utopia.
a
So this
editing
wouldn't
choice.
affect meta placement at all for now. While we do need to still talk about 2 more WCQs and a set release, I'm going to pause here to specifically talk about a historic moment in the Yu-Gi-Oh community's history here that needs to be at the very least mentioned. Many simulators for online play have risen and fallen in the history of the game, as they either get outpaced by advancing
Wait, is this
technology,
the cease and
adapting leads
desist?
them to rot, or, in very rare circumstances, a company orders them to shut down. Dueling Network had been around since 2011, and up until this point in history had been the go-to platform for testing
is
and
that?
deck theorizing, but had over the last year undergone some legal issues stemming around the usage of the official card art for the game from the company Nihon Ad Systems, or NAS for short, who was the production company in charge of the Yu-Gi-Oh animes. Though they had tried to comply by removing all art of the game from the site,
I
a
don't know
cease and
what that
desist
is.
motion was filed, and on July 6, 2016, Dueling Network as it was known was fully taken offline.
Womp,
This would send a
womp,
shockwave
womp.
through the community.
And now
Never
we have
used this
returned
simulator
as the
system for testing,
Dueling
none was widely
Book.
used and accepted as Dueling Network. And while a successor would launch about 6 months later, being Dueling Book, which is still used to
What
this
is
day,
that?
it would still be a moment that hit almost everyone in the community. With all
You
of
just
that out
can't
of the way,
talk
there's
about
also
it
a set
'cause
release
he's
just 2 days
Konami
after the being
sponsored.
taken down, and this would be the one chance of shaking things up in the meta before the remaining 2 WCQs could take place.
What is
Rise
Dueling
of
Book?
True Dragons.
I'm not a
Release date,
Konami
July 8,
shill. I can say
2016.
whatever
Set type,
I want.
structure deck. Major strategies, Drac, Impact, a single new spell for Blue Eyes. Rise of the True Dragons.
Oh, this set was
Dude, it's
worthless.
so sad when your entire structure deck just boils down to, hey, there's one good card in this.
What's the good card? There's the good card Arcbrave Dragon, because that became part of a toxic FTK and like not FTK, toxic combo in Thunder.
That is one thing you got to give it to them. Like recent year structure decks felt a lot better than structure decks back in the day a lot of the times. Like a lot of structure decks, sometimes we had good structures back in the day. It's not like all of them were bad, but the overall quality of a structure deck back in the day, I don't think it was very good for the most part. Like
Yeah, we had a lot of bad ones.
Last year, like there's
Oh,
a lot
Return of the
good
Dragon
structure
Lord,
decks, right?
sure.
Like,
I think
some of them
Arcbrave
end up
was
being
also
tier
a
2,
notable
some
one.
of them end up being tier 3. Fire King even like better than that because of its synergy with Snake Eyes, but like all of the or almost all of the structure decks were like solid.
Dude, I
in
wish
their
Snake Eye
own
never
right,
came out, so
right?
Fire King could just
And
be its
then
own deck, because that deck is cool.
Back in the day, that was not a
And
given.
they gave us all connects.
Back in the day, it was like all over the place. Sometimes the structure decks were really good, like the Monarch one, and then the next one is like this, right?
Structure deck R series in the OCG,
like-
modernizing the Felbrand structure, and man, did it fail hard. The main goal of the deck is to use their
We
level
had
4
no structures
warriors to
for
equip
almost a
learner
year. Yeah, where are structure decks, dude?
bosses from
Now
decks
he's
themselves,
realizing.
then tribute themselves off to revive them, as the target of their revival effect isn't chosen
It's
until
such
after
a
you
weird, it's such a weird decision too, because I feel like all the structure decks in the last year were super well received. Is that
Except for
just me?
Crystal
I
Beast.
feel like all of the
Sad.
structure decks were huge successes. So why did they stop making them in 2024?
This is done to facilitate Arcbrave Dragon, who banishes all of an opponent's back row on summon from grave and can revive a level 7 or 8 dragon.
Who remembers
after
Arcbrave
from grave,
Dragon
and Divine Dragon Lord
with Dark
Felbrand,
Matter
who banishes
Dragon
a monster
and
on summon from
Goliath?
grave and revives a level 7 or 8 dragon on destroying something in battle.
Not fun.
Well, interesting, the issue stood in that the warriors can't activate their effects until you have at least 1 dragon in grave, which the deck did nothing
Blue
to do
Eye
with
structure going to be
outside of
hype? It
reprinting
hasn't
tools
even been
period,
announced
which
in the
was limited.
TCG.
However, a new
There's
spell
a chance that doesn't happen, and they just give it to us
Monster
in
Reborn
a
for level
core
7 and 8
set.
dragons and can be banished from grave to prevent a dragon's destruction. This would be recognized as a perfect addition to Blue Eyes specifically, as the revival conditions matched up perfectly with Blue Eyes' main deck pieces and gave the dragons great protection to use after.
You know what it is, guys? I just thought of the reason. It's because there are no quarter century secret rares in structure decks, and it is
What?
very important that you understand that we need as many quarter
Okay.
century secret rares as possible this year.
Remember the Pendulum Magicians were going to be a structure deck, but they made it into Pivo? Yeah, exactly. That could happen again,
And once again,
right?
the meta was
Like,
fairly set in
do
stone
you
at
think
this point.
that's
The main
above what
goal was
happens
to
there?
around
Like,
their
that could
ratios,
very
with Pepe
easily
and
happen.
Monarch both taking 21 of the top 64 each.
Or
Cyber
even like
Beatrice
how
top
the
64
Earth
just barely
Duelist
cleared, thanks to
pack
large
turned
parts of
into
Drowning Universe.
Mama,
As the deck
right?
already
With
liked to pass on
Ishizu
the Millennium
cards.
Monster row to keep their Cyframe's life as much as
And the
possible.
Gem Knights
So
were put in
having the
Poe.
heavily benefits from this was greatly appreciated.
This deck is
Eric
ass.
take the event on Domain Monarch, which came as a shock to most as the Domain variant was widely regarded as the weakest of the Monarch variants.
I don't get a mention. Sad. Okay, so this event, I was in top 8, and back then there was no Worlds point system, so it was top 6 go to Worlds. I have to win this match. If I lose this match, then there's another match. Now both matches are streamed. The first match is against Admasu. I lose in time. Super depressing. I play against Jimmy Nguyen on the playoff match to go to Worlds then, and this is the match where the infamous deck swap happens. We have the same color. We have the same sleeves because they make you re-sleeve in Top Cut, and we swap decks, and it's super messy. I get nervous, and then I also punt game 3, and I miss out on Worlds. But losses like this is what fuel my fire, and they only make me stronger and get better, because that shit was devastating. I remember I could not bring myself to watch Worlds this year. Like, I was just, yeah, it was definitely the hardest I've ever taken a loss, was that top 8 match. That was brutal.
this stage, seemingly pulling the dream run for the deck. The EU WCQ would be the next weekend, being the last of the WCQs for the year, and we'd see a new variant of Kozmo land in the top 64 here with Speedroid Kozmo, aiming at utilizing the Terror Top engine to access various rank theories either as extension in the case of Leviair, or to clear out threats prior to committing to the Kozmo line such as with Grand Pulse or Break Sword. Samir Bakar would take the event on Majespecter Draco Pals.
Dude, this guy cooked me in top 16. I got destroyed by Samir in 2016, man. I lost the dice roll, got Omega comboed in game 1, and then I bricked game 2. I was out of there in 8 minutes or something.
You got
Notably
this.
playing QB and a small Majespecter trap line to add additional disruption to the deck's end board. This would mark the official end of the WCQ season, with Worlds just around the corner. However, with Worlds coming up, the qualifying players will be looking over the combined card pool and ban list to see what just might be the best.
And there was
option.
also a new
But the best
pack,
option
right?
might have been just a little further ahead, as it seems that Konami was rushing a certain product out way sooner than we in the TCG should have received it to stack Worlds in the favor of one specific deck.
Is this the same? No, I have to pause it.
Dark Side of the
Yeah, I'm about to say he
this
paused
the
at
guy
the
that
worst
won
possible
London in
time
2023? Yes.
for some crazy allegations to
Release
pop
date,
up.
July 22nd,
I was gonna say, like,
2016.
huh?
Set
Like,
type,
weird
import
choice
set.
to
Major strategies,
pause.
Blue Eyes, Gadget, Cubic. Impact, skewing the balance of worlds. The DSOD movie pack is interesting to talk about in retrospect because of the timing of it all. In the OCG, it was released alongside the movie of the same name, bringing the cards from the movie to the OCG on the same day as the movie's release. For other countries, though, DSOD wasn't set to be released until 2017. So why debut the tie-in movie set so early in the TCG? Well, the prevailing theory is that Konami rushed this set out because of a certain set of support that would affect the deck's performance at Worlds. Blue Eyes would receive the other side of its new major support wave here just in time. Neo Ultimate is a retrain of the original Ultimate, taking the same materials, able to send a Blue
Dude,
Eyes
that's a
fusion
crazy conspiracy theory, especially because if it's true, it worked.
to grave after it attacks while it's your only
I could believe it. I don't think it's even a bad idea, though, to be fair, if it is true.
To negate and destroy anything that targets a Blue Eyes. Chaos Maxx is a level 8 ritual that can't be targeted and deals
Bait.
double piercing
Biggest
damage.
bait.
Lastly,
Biggest new
alternative
bait
White
card
Dragon
ever.
can first be summoned by revealing an original Blue Eyes in hand, becomes the original Blue Eyes on field and engraved, and can pop a monster once per turn.
Dude, tinfoil hat on. They released this pack at this time because they wanted Blue Eyes to win Worlds? Holy. I've never heard of that.
In exchange for its attack. This changed everything for Blue Eyes, as you now had a reliable monster
This
summon
set-
alongside
that
your level 1 tuner
still
to access
wasn't
Spirit
even
Dragon on
that
the first turn.
good.
This also pulled Melody of Awakening Dragon out of the bulk pile at last because it searched for alternative and the OG Blue Eyes, giving you the ability to summon it out immediately. On the more niche side of things, Chaos Maxx was also a boss worth considering, as it could be summoned with advanced ritual art by dumping an OG Blue Eyes from deck, giving an option to absolutely obliterate more
bait.
defensive decks. It's fair to say that this support was the reason the pack was rushed out so fast, making the strategy completely legal for Worlds, which we'd see soon enough. The rest of the pack was dedicated to other strategies from DSOD, specifically that of Cubic, a stall-focused strategy focused around Vijam, who can't be destroyed in battle and locks up monsters in
Unplayable.
battles, and
I'm getting a
Magician
phone
Curse,
call.
a series of spellcasters that loop with one another to fill up the board. The only other notable cards here would be that of Gold and Silver Gadget, who
it's
summon a level
nothing.
4 machine from hand on summon
Friend.
and float into any other gadget
What
on
do they need?
destruction, which would see some experimentation.
Chocolate Magician Girl had no reason to be in full screen mode earlier. The card was not that impactful. Come on.
for
We
now,
didn't need
but
that.
not widespread success until much later in the year. This wouldn't be the only new set before Worlds, though, as the next core set would also debut beforehand, but whether it would be impactful to the world scene would have to be seen.
Oh, not Gofu. Not Gofu.
Wait, did we
The
didn't
Dark
talk about
Illusion,
Worlds?
Release date August
Or was
5th,
it
2016.
after?
Set type, core set,
Oh,
major
Snow!
strategy.
I love the Dark Illusion. This set was awesome. Oh god, I love Worlds. I mean, I love the Dark Illusion. Snow Desires, Chef's Kiss. Shiranui Solitaire, fantastic. Block Dragon is solid. We got Coral Dragon's a cool one. Cosmic Cyclone, the Dark Magician support. Spirals. I thought Spiral was fine. Y'all hated Spiral for the wrong reason. Y'all just sucked at it. I'll be blatantly honest. Y'all sucked at Spiral. It's a format that never got to develop. It never got to blossom into its own. And y'all are just bad.
Dark Magician, Metal Foes, Paleozoic. Impact, laying the groundwork for future
Paleo!
metas. The Dark Illusion was the third core set of 2016.
Oh,
and while
really?
It wouldn't be
You're gonna give us a full screen of Chocolate Magician Girl, but not Animal Cars. Okay. All right. Can't say I agree with that.
explosive as Bosch or the fourth
Oh,
core
we
set of
just
the
know
year,
that
people
he'll
will
give
lay
us
the
enough
groundwork for multiple
Anomalous
archetypes
as
will
is.
take hold later in the year and beyond. Following the archetype spawned around Blue
I have to call out Josh. And if Josh is watching this, we were eating dinner on over the weekend. I don't remember how the topic came up. He thought that Opabenia came in the Dark Illusions, not in Einov. So, how well does he really know Paleo if he can't even remember which set had which cards? I'm just saying.
Blue Eyes, Dark Magician would receive a wave of legacy support centered around the titular card. Magician of Dark Illusion becomes Dark Magician on field, can summon itself on the
Josh
opponent's turn
might
when
not
you
be
use
the
spell
biggest
trap effect,
Paleo
and can
fan.
summon a Dark Magician from grave when you use a spell trap effect once while on field. Magician's Robe during the opponent's turn can discard a spell trap to summon Dark Magician from deck, and can summon itself from grave on the opponent's turn when you use a spell trap effect. Magician's Rod searches a spell trap that mentions Dark Magician on normal and can recur itself on the
And
opponent's
also
turn when you
the
use
theme
spell
of a
trap
lot
effect
of
by triggering
really
the monster.
unprofessional
Magician is
jokes.
a spellcaster locked to rank 7 that can use quick play spells and traps from hand on the opponent's turn by detaching material for each, and floats into a Dark
Yeah,
Spellcaster
let's get
in
to the
deck
real
on removal,
deal.
then pops a card on field. Their spell traps all revolve around the original Dark Magician, with illusion magic able to tribute a spellcaster to search up to 2
Ah,
Dark
bad
Magicians from
chest.
deck or grave. Dark Magic expand, gaining more effects for each Dark Magician or girl
He
on
doesn't
field or
give
grave,
a
with
shit.
1+
He just
boosting
wants
a
to
Dark
talk about
Spellcaster by
Paleos.
1000, 2+ locking the opponent from chaining spell trap effects and preventing them from destruction, and 3+ making Dark Spellcasters you control immune to card effects. And Magician Navigation, summoning a Dark
Bro, I haven't read these cards whenever I was playing against Blue Eyes, against Dark Magician. I'm not gonna start now.
Magician from hand.
Really? These cards are cool.
Spellcaster from deck, able to banish from grave the negate.
I always thought this deck was cool.
You control Dark Magician. Lastly, Dark Magical Circle looks at the top 3 of the deck on activation, adding a Dark Magician or spell trap that mentions it to hand from those, and places the others back in any order. And while on field, banishes an opponent's card once per turn when you summon a Dark Magician. The strategy had a clear direction here, with Circle Control easily.
Don't question his love for extinct animals printed in cardboard. Does he love dinosaurs or something?
And consistent access to Dark Magician reliably. A lot of the deck's plays relied heavily on
This deck is everywhere on masterduel low ranks. Is it? I can imagine that. Yeah.
Circle and navigation.
It is because it's the structure deck.
Needed a Dark Magician in hand to trigger nav in the first.
Is this in Blue Eyes? Is everywhere.
This would leave Dark Magician in the position of a rogue deck at best for now. But a note should be made here about the requirement to search cards that listed Dark Magician specifically. This was clearly put in place to make the new support able to search older cards like Thousand Knives and Dark Magic Curtain, but left a very specific casualty in the funniest way possible. The Eye of Demise, despite having Dark Magician written on the card, could not be searched with any of the support due to it not listing Dark Magician specifically, as it said a Dark Magician monster. This would be a bit of a logistical mess in the short term, but a funny trivia fact looking back now. Metalthos was a new series of.
I mean, we have the same problem with Yubel now. It's now become an actual thing in the semantics of Yu-Gi-Oh, and it's all so stupid. But yes, like that whole element is nonsense. But yeah.
Face up card once per turn in the pendulum scale to set a Metalthos spell trap from deck, with Stealing being a level 2 scale 8, Silver to level 3 scale 1, Gold Driver a level 4 scale 1, and Volflame a level 7 scale 8. Their traps were all focused on furthering the popping effects, with Counter able to summon a Metalthos from deck when a card you control's pop, able to be banished from grave to recur a Metalthos.
The semantics of Yu-Gi-Oh have always mattered. Yeah, but they don't need to add more semantics and bullshit. They could lessen it, not make more.
Metalthos on summon, and searches the Metalthos monster when sent to grave. Their primary game plan involves using the various pops and pendulum summons to
How is it coming up in Yubel? This card does not mention Yubel, but it mentions Yubel monsters. Therefore, you cannot search it with Spirit of Yubel. It's a very stupid interaction.
Facilitate their main spell, Metalthos Fusion, with a standard fusion effect and the ability to put itself from grave on bottom of deck to draw 1. Adamant is a vanilla fusion of a Metalthos and a 2500 or less attack monster. Crimsonite is a vanilla fusion of a Metalthos and 2 3000 or less attack monsters.
Metalthos is very cool. This is like the only pendulum deck I actually like.
And pops a card when sent to grave. Metalthos here poised a compelling strategy, being similar to Ignite, but with a set of bosses that didn't hamper the
it's the card that adds emptiness. I hate you.
deck's long game, though at this stage would be relegated to tier 3 as its
what do you mean card that adds emptiness? Did Josh get cheesered or something and we just don't know about it? Or I don't know about it.
Kozmo or even Yang Zing, as the pop and set effects were simultaneous, meaning that Yang Zings wouldn't miss timing. With a third block of sets for the era, once again, the TCG exclusives would change over to 2 new archetypes, with both receiving 4 cards a set now rather than one getting 5 while the other gets 3. The first of these was Subterror, bringing yet another attempt at revolutionizing flip monsters for the modern day with a bunch of high-level
these cards suck.
Each of the behemoths shares an effect to special summon themselves from hand when your last face-up monster on field flips face down. It can flip themselves face down once per turn. Umastrix on flip banishes
YCS Billy final? Okay, I don't really remember that.
Nemesis Warrior would be the starter of sorts, able to dump a Subterror from deck.
This card sucked as well.
Or equal to or more than the set
last time I checked, Nemesis Warrior is not the starter.
From grave if a behemoth gets
Guru wasn't out yet, so
they're crazy. They think their city's hidden, bro. It's right there. I see it just fine.
Searches a Subterror on activation, can flip a Subterror face up once per turn, and can negate an attack by flipping a set Subterror face up. While this set of cards was interesting for sure, there wasn't a clear direction to take the strategy out the gate like there was with BA or Kozmo, and it was clear that Konami
Billy got Furman to play the Metalthos from UDS too.
And a secret rare between these
God, good old
so
days.
most would invest immediately into this archetype with the hopes that waves 2, 3, or 4 would get it there. As for now, it wasn't even good enough to be rogue. The other archetype was Spiral, which was clearly centered around Super Agent, who could summon itself from hand if you called the super type of the top card of the opponent's deck correctly. Popping a spell trap is summoned by a Spiral effect. Gear Drone, able to rearrange the top 3 of the opponent's deck on summon, contribute
that effect is toxic. I'll admit that much.
That wasn't gauge. No, I know, but it's a gauge impression, so it counts. And it's pretty accurate.
Itself and a Spiral card in grave to recur a Super Agent. Quick Fix can search a Spiral Gear on summon and can summon itself from grave for a discard while you control Super Agent. And Gear Big Red can revive a Spiral and blocks it from being destroyed in battle. Spiral was underplayed in its hype on reveal compared to Subterror, but on initial inspection looked to be the better of the 2 archetypes, being a far more generically usable engine of sorts.
Yeah.
The Super Agent provided
I loved the days where everybody would play just like 3 resorts in their deck and like 1 or 2 double agents or super agents because it was just like good versus paleo and versus other decks.
Removal and Quick Fix for some reason being a machine type, meaning
most cringe cards of all time. I don't actually think so. I think Spiral was completely fine as a TCG exclusive archetype, except until they gave it double helix. Like I think Spiral was completely reasonable and fine and not even good.
Nah, it was fine. Y'all just didn't play properly.
And actually a pretty cool concept until the OCG just decided like
Syriax raid coming.
The best Link monster.
I was wondering who would end first if I'd be able to raid him.
Machine duplication.
What's good, Syriax?
Many would pick up a set of these on release thanks to the
hope all you raiders are having a good time.
A little shaping. In the OCG import slots though, we'd also see 2 archetypes. One of which was a favorite of the community at this stage that we've been
Josh is about to have a
trains were a series of cards
explosion right here.
By an archetype, but rather a designation of being level 4 or 10 Earth machines. These had been introduced back in Zexal and popularized slightly
Master Casino.
as a burn tool for
it's not actually a casino deck, guys.
Have been missing for a while now. Heavy Freight Train Derrick Crane can summon itself from hand if you summon summon an Earth Machine and can pop a card when detached from an
You're playing versus mostly
Switch turns,
stun?
appeals
That
stun,
sounds
summons a level 4
very
Earth Machine
awful.
from
I'm
deck,
sorry
and
for your
summons a
loss.
level 10, then boosts its level up to 10, and can discard a card to search a level 10 Earth Machine. Number 81, Super Dreadnought.
come on,
Rail
show me
Cannon, Super
Paleos.
Dwarf, Red Cannon, can detach one card
I'm
effect
in the same boat.
unaffected by card effects that
I
strike.
could not
We're
care
leaving
less
the
about
best
these
for
cards.
last on purpose.
Well, it seems odd that I'm focusing on these so much. The OCG got these cards back in Secrets of Eternity, and off of that, a deck known as Shadal Trains was heavily popularized and actually did quite well for the time thanks to Shekanaga, who itself is a level 10 Earth Machine. And the deck had been popular for online simulators in the TCG as well for some
What are
time.
your
But with
thoughts
the
on
hits
Pure
to Shadal already
Lightsworn
present
related
in-
support? I mean, Pure is never good for Lightsworn. You need to add other cards in there. But check my Discord. I have my tier Lightsworn deck up that I think is pretty like heavy on Lightsworn cards. Should be some fun.
He's coming to us too late. It was clear that trains would be relegated to a rogue strategy at best. The other OCG import strategy,
Let's
oddly enough being
go!
a Korean exclusive import, was Paleozoic, a series of traps that all shared the effect to summon themselves back as level 2 water
All
from the
three
grave and
Shadal
chained to a
players
trap, with all
enjoyed
being
it,
unaffected
yeah.
by monster effects when you did. Oleanoids pops a spell trap, Hallucigenia halves a monster's attack and defense that turn, Canadia flips an opponent's monster to face down defense, Bakaya discards a Paleozoic to draw 2, and Anomalic Eris is a 3-material rank 2 that's unaffected by monsters.
Josh's daddy,
Execute
apparently.
one At the hand if it's a trap or sent to grave otherwise when the trap is sent to grave.
Daddy!
And can attach to pop a card on quick effect if
Man.
that trap is material.
He's just
interesting for
leading into it
Paleozoic
fully
isn't good
now.
enough on their own right now to be considered for the meta, though many will be keeping an eye on them for the future if the remainder of their support got
We need to get
DD
like
Savant
fan
Thompson
art
scaled to
of
recover
like
face-up DD Pendulum from extra
Anomaly Eris just patting Josh in the head. You did a good job, son.
and on field can pop a DD
You know, we formed a community whenever I call Animal Cars daddy, there's more daddies than hus in chat. That was the goal all along.
Oh my god, you're right.
in scale to summon a level 8 DDD from deck, giving DDs an option to actually access Oblivion King Abyss
Because when it happened the first time, it was only hus. Now it's more daddies than hus.
Ragnarok semi-reliably, giving DD a slight boost into the meta. Black will go from the Big Shadow to summon itself from hand
Oh,
while you
fuck
control
this
no
card.
monsters,
Go
optionally
Fu.
summoning 2 tokens when it did. It could banish itself in any number of non-tuners to revive a Blackwing Synchro of that level, making it a tuner. I don't believe anyone has ever used that last effect, as the first effect was actually surprisingly useful for various decks. The new Metal Foes clearly could use it with the tokens as fodder for their search pops, and a level 5 tuner could be used to access level 7 and 8 synchros reliably. Monarch wanted it as a better level 5 tuner to play than Quick Draw, immediately being slotted into variants for Zulkin, and even those without it as a Cyber Dragon.
No one
card.
believes me
And a
when I
couple
say
of
that
other
I'm
decks
also a
aimed at
Paleo
multiple
fan
copies of
because I'm
Omega
just not
and
as
Visual
big a
to handle
Paleo
Duel
fan
first.
as Josh.
And this will not be the last time
I
we talk
also
about
love
this
that
card,
deck.
as while it was already solidly useful, within 1 year it would become one of the most ban-worthy cards the game had seen in a long
Anomaly
time.
Eris dressed as a 1950 sailman coming home with his children.
Opabini
and Dynamist kissing Josh. Exactly.
2 monsters on field or in hand, including
Opabini is like the wife,
this way, and
but holding the martini, right?
For fire. Though interesting for sure, this card was a bit too early to the party to be useful yet. But let's put a pin in that, and we'll circle back to it in 2017. Shiranui Solitaire contributed a zombie to summon a zombie tuner with 0 defense.
This is the meta-relevant
Shiranui
Shiranui card.
Shiranui monster. This was the only card Shiranui needed to be relevant, and boy was it.
That's
By
crazy how many
contributing
cards in the
itself,
second
it could summon
FNL
from
list.
deck, who in turn put a Spectral
Is it
Sword
that
from deck
many?
into grave to make its level 4.
No,
It's
it
just
didn't.
Snow Block
No, it
Dragons.
didn't put
right?
Spectral Sword
Desires.
into grave. Don't lie to me.
Samurai Saga, then use Solitaire's
No.
other effect to resummon the Spectral
No.
Sword to synchro into an 8 and set up the
No.
grave for Shogun Saga the following turn.
No.
Well, this sounds like it's just a great day for zombie lovers all around. Of course, there's some degeneracy attached to this. While one would assume they'd summon more in-archetype pieces this way, or maybe even a cool zombie or two, this combo was used to reliably access multiple copies of
Psy-Frame
Omega and
Lord
Trishula on
Omega.
turn 1 to hand rip the opponent. I mean, they really did make it easy, didn't they? One card access to a level 8 synchro and a level 4 or 5 tuner, what more could you ask for? This would, unfortunately, be a decently popular option in the upcoming metagame, and would be a deck that would have to be accounted for.
I
in multiple
loved
metagames
this
moving
deck
forward.
even before
Speaking
Grass
of,
came out.
Block Dragon
'Cause I had
summon by
Minerva.
banishing 3 Earths from hand or grave.
I finally finished getting my Paleo deck together. It didn't help that I spent a bunch of time importing Euro versions of all the cards. Very fitting that you finished it today when Sixth Sense is going to return to boost Paleo. Anyway,
What the
Block
heck
Dragon's
opium
cringe.
am I
All
listening
destruction,
to?
some battle destruction, and if sent to grave searches up to 3 rocks, whose
Earth
total level equals
Flamberge.
8.
Yep.
This card
Rock
on release
Flamberge
was a
Dragon.
complete flop, as there was not a single rock archetype or deck that was good enough to include this and be meta. Though some would try this with Triamids from the same set and with the prior rock stuff,
Triamids.
but both would come up short. Though this card would
I remember
be
trying this in
Very
Zodiac. It
Snow
was
on
neat.
summon flips an opponent's monster face
Ooh,
down and can be
let's
summoned
go.
from grave by banishing 7 cards from hand, field, or grave. Oh, I get it, like the 7 dwarves. Snow is a weird card to talk about in a vacuum, as it was recognized as good out the gate, being constantly recurable by banishing used cards, but for the time being was relegated to an option for decks that specialize in milling like lightsworn.
I should have played this in BA. It was really good in the mirror.
As it's a whole nother can of worms. Coral Dragon is a level 6 synchro tuner that can discard
Good
a card,
card.
keep
My
a card,
boy.
and sit to grave, draws a card. Simple,
Bro, this set
effective,
really
game
was-
decks with easy level 6
This set really was the best set ever.
synchro access to Zulkin.
Coral Dragon as
yeah,
well.
because to start as Charge Warrior, a common practice
So-
moving forward for decks that can make 2 level 6 synchros is to make these 2 to access Zulkin and Crystal Wing.
I can see all the wide Jesse walks in his chat right now.
Bro, why are all the cool cards always water? Why is water the coolest attribute by far? Mermail, Atlantean, Paleos.
What do you mean, bro?
Coral
Fire
Dragon,
is so cool. Don't you love
frogs
Snake
in
Eye
general.
cards?
Come on, man. Why is water the coolest attribute by so far? It's not even close. They're not making it.
And
they're not
people
even
in chat
making
are
it
like
hard
Rubina
to
and
decide what
Dogwood.
the
Yeah, I
coolest
guess.
attribute is. It's water.
Of 1,000
Water is
level
pretty
fours can
cool.
banish a spell trap, being clearly intended as yet another alternative to MST that handled more cases in a far stronger way, which would see serious
Yeah.
play following release.
Dogwood. Rubina.
Card of the Soul could search
Yeah,
any
my
monster whose
favorite
total attack
waters
defense
like
equals your
Mudon,
current life
Rubina,
points. While this card was
and
incredibly
Dogwood.
niche, some experimentation would be seen with it
Bro,
for searching monsters with a total of 8,000.
who's playing this card? I remember we played it in in Dueling, because you had 4,000 life, you'd add Sacred Phoenix Neptabyss. But this card is dog shit. Why is this a card we're talking about?
Thanks to your starting life total being that much, primarily in use with Obelisk the Tormentor and Kozmo Dark Planet. Floodgate Trap Hole could flip any summoned monster face down permanently, which would see serious play as a way to mass lock a bunch of pendulum summoned monsters all at once as a Rafflesia target. Lastly, and without question the most hotly debated card of the time, Pot of Desires could banish the top 10 cards of your deck face
I
down
love
with
this card
monsters.
so
This
much.
would be
My
a card
favorite
that
pot,
caused
for sure.
massive divide in the player
-9.
base immediately on whether or not it was worth playing, debating whether this was a +1 or a -9. And truthfully, this wouldn't have happened if the card wasn't a secret rare. The common consensus was that Desires in a deck that's almost exclusively built of 3-ofs with no critical garnets was without question an insanely great option, while decks that played a lot of 1-ofs or played heavy.
Chat, -9 or +1? -9 or +1?
I mean, you only control responses. -10. Yep, that guy mathed really well. +11 or -9? Why would it be +11?
The Dark Illusion was a far more impactful set than one might have expected on the 10, but it wasn't the only.
Oh, because you banished 10 cards and that's a plus?
There was another OCG
Yeah.
import set just 2 weeks later, and based on how
It makes my Zeraboros
this one
bigger.
had a lot of slack to pick up.
So it's like, so what Desires actually says is it's +1 and burn 2,000 damage to your opponent because of Zeraboros.
August 19th, 2016.
Dude, is that number
Set type,
100?
import set. Major strategies, cyber.
What's my dad's opinion on the card? He does not like it. Literally every time I put it in his deck, he's like, he'll draw it and just not activate it. I'm like, why did you like let me put that card in your deck if you were never going to use it? And he just shrugs.
Angel, Numeron, Flower.
Oh,
Card,
no, Ben
Impact,
10.
Tech for ritual decks. Dragons of Legend Unleashed was the third crack at the Dragons
Not
of Legend
Ben
import
10.
sets, with the first being meta warpingly good and the second being one of the worst sets of all time. This would land
Yep,
somewhere
this
on the
set's
worst end of the spectrum.
so
but
bad.
Unlike 2 actually had a couple of useful cards. Cyber Angel was a series of ritual fairies with effects ranging from combat bonuses to full piece
Drytron tribute fodder.
wave. The one primarily focused on by most was Ben 10, able to search for any light fairy when tributed. Because of this interaction, there was a laundry list of cards that Ben 10 could search in the right deck, from play starters like Stick and Chair to floodgates like Christia and Vanity's Ruler, to even more copies of itself as ritual.
Vanity's
Fodder, which put it on a lot
Ruler.
of people's list as a ritual tool.
Ava.
Number 100 Numeron Dragon can be made with any 2 same name number exceeds and can detach to boost itself by the total ranks of exceeds on the field times 1.
Whenever this card hits the board in Masterduel, you know shit's going down, dude.
You know you're getting FPK'd. There's going to be a Mystic Walk.
But at the time, did not have enough ranks to enable it effectively. Galaxy Eye Cypher Dragon.
You're about to be
can detach
cooked,
opponent's
very
monster, make
literally.
its attack 3,000, and change its name to Galaxy Eye Cypher Dragon for the turn. This would be a fairly massive boon.
This
to
card is
Galaxy
really
Eye's
good.
Exceed pool at the
I
time,
like this card a lot in
providing
Thunder.
rank 8 that can be used to overlay onto for any number of Exceed rank ups, while still actually doing something useful on its own. The Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championship 2016 would be held the same weekend, and though Blue Eyes was handed the golden ticket for the event, it would actually see some serious competition for top 8. PK Fire would squeeze in a single top 8 spot, primarily suffering here due to the limited status of Dante and the OCG, which coupled with the various hits to the main deck BAs already present, would leave the deck to rely more heavily on its other rank 3 tools, specifically in Break Sword. Majespecter would climb all the way to top 4, utilizing Sky Iris for completing scales and giving access to high enough scales to keep Kieran on the board. Kieran here would be a major player, as its effect being a repeatable bounce between turns gave Majespecter a serious amount of long game play, even once the spell trap lines were used up. Though it had competition in the top 8, the finals would be a mirror match between Blue Eyes, with very similar builds being balanced between both players.
Shunsuke
With the
Didn't Gally get second with Necros?
No, he has the year wrong. That's 2014, right? Or 2015. So this is Eric Christensen.
Or was that... What did the... Oh, that was 2015. Okay.
addition of alternative to the deck, a player could now reliably access Spirit Dragon going first, which in turn...
Oh yeah, it was Christensen. I remember. Yeah. Thank you. It was the one where he broke the trophy, or the trophy.
What's
was
the card next?
broken,
Mask Restrict.
And he
this is
like,
XYZ
the
Universe.
top fell off.
XYZ Universe. Very good
I
card.
remember.
Locked out its competition and could even dodge removal with its effect tag into a light dragon, which gave the option of Azure Eyes, the intended target of this effect, as its destruction immunity would overwrite the downside of Spirit, as well as...
So the real reason, I'll let you know what the real reason is why Blue Eyes won Worlds, is because of how the Worlds ban list works.
Yeah.
Where it's this mix between OCG and TCG format, where everything that is already on the Forbidden Limited list in the OCG, because they are a couple months ahead with their set releases, a lot of the stuff that's meta for us is already hit over there, right? Because they've gotten the cards sooner, so they also hit them sooner.
But then those cards that are
all the
out there
cards
aren't
that
legal
are
here.
Out in the OCG, but not out yet in the TCG yet, are also not legal, right? So all of the meta decks basically are weaker. Our meta decks are weaker because the OCG has already addressed them on the Forbidden Limited list, and their meta decks are weaker because they're not even out yet, which always leads to this kind of like slob of rogue decks or tier 2 decks suddenly being
It hasn't been
viable.
as bad
And this
lately.
is exactly
but,
where Blue Eyes
yeah.
comes in. Blue Eyes is good at Worlds, or was good at Worlds, because it was already out for both formats, but it wasn't meta in either format, so it didn't have any hits. That was basically that's the gist of it. That's why I think Blue Eyes was viable, or even I personally don't think it was the best deck. I helped some people from Europe prepare for the event. I don't think Blue Eyes was that good. I think there were definitely other decks.
Blue Eyes just isn't that good of a deck,
better.
period.
Like even Burning Abyss Phantom Knight with one Dante is probably fine. Like it topped. It was pretty good. I think you could definitely build powerful pendulum control decks with Kirin. Yes, you couldn't build like all in kind of pendulum decks for the format, but like Kieran was at 3.
And then Kozmo was a
three,
TCG exclusive as well, so that was not legal.
Bunbuku, which at the time should have definitely been better than Blue Eyes.
World, do you think how TCG does it, or is Masterduel better? Masterduel is hands down better.
Japan would take this year's Worlds title with Blue Eyes, not only marking himself as the first.
Not having to deal with the format bullshit, it's easier to watch because it's digital. The team thing is better. And I think the qualification system means that the players who really want to fight for the spot earn it a lot better. Means that overall it's a lot better of an experience.
Win Worlds twice, but in back-to-back years no less. With no time to recover, YCS Rimini would take place a week later, and shockingly, Blue Eyes
Same
would
day as
be nowhere to
Toronto,
be seen
right?
in the top 32.
Shocking.
Without the combined ban list of the TCG and OCG, Blue Eyes could not compete with its contemporaries enough to crack in, needing a ban list to do so in the future. Probably the biggest point of note here would be the top spot of Brilliant Lightsworn, which went completely undefeated in Swiss rounds, only to fall out in top 32. The new pieces the deck gained from Dark Illusion were actually incredibly significant, being Fairy Tail Snow, which could utilize
This deck should have played Solitaire with
Would have been
Mizuki.
super cool
being
and
zombie.
popular. If Minerva wasn't $1,000 or something.
cards
Yeah,
incredibly well for access
that
to
too.
Minerva by being half of a rank 4, meaning you could detach and mill
You
more.
played that?
gaining you-
Which event is this? Is this YCS Liverpool? I had one Minerva. I had one because I won one in Super Rare. But at Rimini, I topped using Pendulum. I topped YCS Rimini with the Pendulum deck from Euros, but I included Desires in it. I
There's
didn't
no
play
reason for
Minerva
2
it.
formats. I think it's too far split at this point.
even more fodder for another run.
I
This would
played,
actually be the
I
tipping
played
point for
Lightsworn at
Minerva.
YCS
As moving
Liverpool.
forward from here, rank 4 focus decks that utilize milling would become more and more popular, arguably a top-tier contender in the meta, but would be held back entirely by the price point of Minerva, because as of this event, she was no longer the YCS prize card in rotation, meaning that her
It's not just the price point, it's also just like a deck like that simply mathematically just cannot be that popular, because how many super rare versions of a price card even are there?
Yeah.
Right? Like how many are there? Even with them giving out a bunch of them at
Well,
like
I
the
think there were
Continental
issues
sets,
with
maybe
some
like
being
200 or
leaked,
something.
but yeah.
So like it cannot reach certain levels of representation. It's just not possible.
Y'all
Even
aren't
if
ready for my
people were
Primordial deck, which is going to have a bunch of ultra rare and other cards.
Thing to spend that much for the price card. It just there are not enough out there to do that, right?
quantities were extremely limited now, even more than they had been before. Alberto Conti would take the event on Fire King Kozmo,
Based
utilizing
Alberto.
more niche picks like Delta Shuttle, Landwalker, and even 3 Sword Troopers, a practice not common amongst Kozmo players of the era. He
Damn,
would
this
also be
deck
the first
sucks.
recipient of the new YCS prize card.
This
Maybe
YCS
this is a
by the
European
way,
thing
we
for the
had
deck to be more
Alberto on the
popular. I
podcast.
thought that deck
He's
sucked.
playing Pokemon now.
I feel
so
like
we
a lot
talked
of the
to him
American
about
players
some
felt
of
the
differences
same
and
way.
Stuff like that, some of his journey. This is one of the funniest YCS finals because he's playing against Typhoon in the finals, and Typhoon just scoops. I think he just scooped game 3 because he bricked going first, and it turns out Alberto's hand was also pretty bad because he would have top decked the chicken. I think was card number 6, and without the chicken he couldn't play either, and I think Typhoon would have actually won. But he just scooped out of frustration of drawing a brick hand. He drew like 3 or 4 field spells in Majespecter. I don't know exactly, but he just scooped it
That's
up without
pretty
even
crazy.
playing, and he would have.
I can't imagine skipping it though.
A practice
Is
not
this
common
before
just in
Demise
the same
Cosmo?
era.
Demise
He was
combo
also
is
the
worth
first
it.
recipient of the new
I mean,
YCS
sorry,
prize
it
card number
is
39
legal while
Tokyo
this is
Kaiju, which would not be
is here. Like
relevant.
that version is worth it. This
YCS
is not.
Toronto would be the same weekend, and similarly would hold the same meta we've come to expect with a singular standout.
Yeah, see,
being
like our metas feel different. There was way less Pendulum, and BA was just so much better for us. I don't know. I fucking cherries twice in Top Cut here. I literally lost game 1 or game 2 and 3 to Reaper in top 16.
usage
Fucking
of
hate that
Sperry
card.
Uranus and a single topping Monarch list, which
The
we
what?
unfortunately do not have a deck list for, but is listed as such in Konami's coverage, able to access the Monarch continuous spell traps depending on the opponent's choice. Bodon Temniak
Floodgate
would the event
Turbo.
on PK Fire, a combo format
Bodon!
at this stage. The ban list would be updated 2 days later on August 29th, and unsurprisingly would bring down a culling wave onto the meta for the past 6 months. Newly banned were Perform Pal Monkey Board, the 1-card scale option of Pendulum strategies, and Kaiser Coliseum, an annoyance to play into on all fronts. Newly limited
Oh, we're banning floodgates in 2016. Cool.
were Beatrice and Seer as hits to PK Fire,
Rip.
Aether, Pantheism, and Stormforth as hits to Monarch,
This was
Dark
heavy.
Destroyer and Eteli as hits to Cosmo, and Kieran and Pendulum Call as hits to Pendulum. Newly semi-limited were Maxx, sparking a
and
massive
the Metal
debate in
Foes
the
became,
community
like, the
on
best
whether
deck.
Blowout Hand Trap even had a place at 1 or 2, and Ryo and
This is literally the worst case scenario is when Maxx at 1 or 2. I mean, I guess you could argue I'd rather play against 1 or 2 Maxx than 3. At least in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, that'd probably be true. But back in the day, the way we felt about it, let me at least explain why the debate was even held like that. Where is Maxx? Oh, I just can't get a nice visual. Where's Maxx, dude? There it was. There. It was like if Maxx was at 3, there were a couple of decks in the format that you just couldn't really play because of it, right? Like certain combo decks, you would just go into a tournament because there was no Called By or no Ash Blossom yet, by the way, which is really cool. Maxx would basically always resolve against you, and
Yep.
if your crazy combo pile got Maxx, you would simply lose, no questions asked, right? But when Maxx was at 1 or 2, those kind of decks suddenly became like viable because statistically it wasn't correct to respect Maxx in deck building, right? Like why would I respect the 1 of or 2 of Maxx? I'll just play my combo deck anyways and just go all in and go for it. But then sometimes when they had the Maxx, it was like completely out of your control.
You just auto lose. It makes it way more variance and luck based.
It was this weird spot where if Maxx is at 3 and you can't negate it, then at least it has this impact on combo decks that makes them unviable. So people would play slower decks because Maxx was in the game.
It's how it works in masterduel. Yeah, for some degree, for sure.
As soon as people start playing, as soon as like Ash Blossom and Called By are being printed, because you look at masterduel right now, and that argument just does not apply anymore. Because now, if you want to play a combo deck in masterduel, you can. All you have to do is you have to put in outs to Maxx, and you don't have to respect it, right? Like, I still to this day believe that if Ash and Called By wouldn't exist and Maxx would always resolve, you would have to be playing other decks. But it's irrelevant because it's better that it's banned anyways in the TCG. But that is why people felt this way about 1 or 2 copies of Maxx when it slowly got in the direction of ban.
The blowout hand trap even had a place at 1 or 2, and Ryo and Wind Up Magician returning from 1. Lastly, Unlimited were Thousand Eyes Restrict, Allure of Darkness, and Gold Sarcophagus, with 2 of these still being solid options for some decks in the meta.
It applies in the OCG with Fuvaros out now. I don't know because they still have all the outs. Right, the OCG still has all the outs to them, so I think it doesn't really change because they had Maxx before. Now they have Maxx and Fuvaros. So obviously it has an impact on the format and on the statistics.
I'm very curious how Fuvaros
right?
is going to affect our meta game.
You just don't get Maxx, but you get Fuvaros now a lot more. But still, overall, the point still stands. You can still play your crazy combo deck because if they have a hand trap for it, you still have a chance of having Ash Called By or Crossout, right? And this is also what's like kind of scary if you look at the TCG. I think that's why. In a little bit less than 2 hours from now, I hope they actually hit Crossout Designator, because Crossout Designator being at 3 for the TCG actually means that we technically have even more outs than the OCG, because we have 3 Crossout, 1 Called By, and 3 Ash, which is 7 outs for the mini game. So like if Crossout doesn't get hit,
you think Fuwa is main worthy? Yeah, probably.
We're just going to be playing Fuvaros mini games, right?
With the blanket hits across the board to all 4 meta strategies, PK Fire, Monarch, Kozmo, and Pendulums would all need to restructure or die to remain. What was particularly funny about this list was the seemingly lax hits doled out to specifically PK Fire, as while Beatrice to 1 was certainly a hit and losing another seer would hurt, many expected the hit to be given to Dante, as it was in the OCG. This re-sparked the Dante is banlist immune discussion, which would also lead to easily one of the greatest memes in the game's history being born. And if you haven't seen this before, I would heavily recommend pausing here and going to watch it, as it is a wonderful piece of Yu-Gi-Oh history. The year's Megaton would also follow this ban list, notably reprinting the
The Cosmic Cyclone in the pocket of Scout is the best part.
Types of DDD, Fluffle, Gem Knights, Ignites, Kaiju, Majespecter, Performage, and Performapal, but also bringing us 2 specific promos.
Oh,
of
Megatons.
DDD, Flame King Genghis, and Dust King
How
Alexander
shit
would
you can
imported
be.
here, being a fusion of 2 DDs, and a level 7 Synchro requiring a DD tuner respectively, with both sharing an effect to revive a DD when a DD is summoned, with Flame King able to revive a DD on special summon, and Alexander being able to revive a level 4 or lower on normal or special, both being critical pieces of the DD Dex combo lines, but still not quite cracking the meta, requiring a couple more specific imports to do the trick, hovering in the rogue range for now.
I think that's not the reason why these weren't meta relevant. I think, and they have identified that reason later and fixed it. But I think the reason why these DDD cards were not good enough is clearly because their names just weren't long enough. That has to have been, that was the issue with the DDD cards. If they had had 5 extra words in the name, they would have been tier 0. And they fixed that with future iterations of the DDD cards, thankfully.
Duelist Pack Rivals of the Pharaoh would also release here, bringing a singular relevant card in Lullaby of Obedience, which can pay 2k
or more
to
Ds.
monster, and if it's in the opponent's deck, either summons it to your field or adds it to your hand. This would be an interesting card kicked around for some mirror matchups, but would for the most part be unremarkable unless the format was so heavily centered around one specific matchup, like in the case of a tier 0 meta, but we just left one of those. So how long would we have to wait for the next? YCS Mexico City would be the same weekend, and being the first tournament following the August ban list, the meta would be thrown into a state of flux. Blue Eyes would pull into the lead as the front runner of the meta here with nerfs
There's
across
no
the board,
shot Blue Eyes was ever the best deck in the TCG.
No, Metaphors is way better.
Capping out at top 4. Merlantian would see a significant rise in popularity here, being a rogue tier 3 level deck since the release of Neptabyss, but with its competition out of the way could rise up to tier 2, being a solid option for the next few events. There were a lot of one-ofs that would appear in this particular top cut, and though we don't have lists for a majority of them, we do have a couple to look over. Blazing Gadget would be one of the more interesting lists utilizing Gadget swarming and the Brilliant Fusion Engine to facilitate the summon.
What?
In 2016?
The fuck is this?
The Blazing Mars. While this card is in your hand or graveyard, you can banish 3 other monsters from your
It's
grave.
Budget Snow is what it is.
Special summon this card. Also, you can't special summon other monsters for the rest of this turn. During your main phase 1, you can send all other monsters you control to the graveyard. Inflict 500 damage to your opponent for each monster sent to the grave. Why is this here?
Of Blazing Mars, who in turn could stack the board for a 2,000 damage burn. Dynamist would see a top here alongside the standard Performapal package we've come to expect for Pendulums, namely utilizing Dynamist Charge to both set scales and provide recursion for your Dynamist pieces. The most impactful of the one-offs that we have listed though would be Shiranui Zombie, taking note of Solitair's power.
Why is so much fascination with the Shiranui?
Dude, can we get to Invasion Vengeance?
Adapted into multiple decks over the next year, which we'd see soon enough. Adrian Madriz would take the event on probably the most talked about new threat, Metal Foes. Metal Foes have gotten their big break with the shift in the meta, utilizing all sorts of tools alongside their pups to gain as much value as possible. Some options included Clifford Scout, who could pay 8 to search for Monolith, pop it for a Metal Foes Bow Search, and then on the Pendulum Summon, bring back the Scout with Monolith to make Cyber Dragon Nova into Infinity. Blackwing Dofu to provide its 2 tokens from the Metal Foe pops, and then convert itself in another level 5 like the Cliff Orts to make Zoltan for a toolbox of Dragon Synchros, and the newly released Odd Eyes Mirage Dragon, being a better scale 8 for Sky Iris when you don't need the Performapal synergy of Unicorn. Adding on to the ever-growing list of more minor releases, Legendary Decks 2 dropped on October 6th, 3 nostalgic bait decks for Yugi, Kaiba, and Joey, but also including a few interesting promos. Ties of the Brethren could pay 2k.
So we're just not talking any of the UDSs?
It didn't end up being good or played much, but it was hype.
Ties could easily
Because Furman wins UDS Chicago there as well.
Seeing experimentation with some strategies already in the meta.
The Jowgen Metal Foe deck is
the
there.
other interesting promo was Eternal Soul, a continuous trap that makes Dark Magician immune to opponent's effects, can either summon a Dark Magician from hand or grave, or search a Dark Magic attack or Thousand Knives from deck once per turn, and nuke your monsters if it leaves the field. This would provide Dark Magician with something the deck desperately needed: reliable and repeatable access to the titular monster, which would actually boost Dark Magician into the ranks of a rogue deck, but not much further than that.
I think Jeff got 33rd with it.
And though many of the decks of the previous meta took large hits on the ban list, they begin to creep back in here, with PK Fire specifically reestablishing itself as a meta threat. Majespecter would see a new variant pop here in Ties of the Brethren, with level 3s giving access to Nekomata and Boku, and level 4s giving access to Yada, QB, and Ogama, allowing full access.
Is the video too short for me?
Would pop back up here thanks to card
It's fair. It is a long video, but like it's forgetting a piece of history.
As a level 4 swarming body.
Does Furman still play? Not really. Although he is going to come to YCS Niagara, so he might play Time Wizard though.
Also stepping more into the
deck was very fun.
Clownblade engine, notably on 1 Minerva. Phantom Knights would see a top completely separate from the BA cards, notably playing Gofu to access
Super Hippo Carnival.
3 Phantom Knights, as well as
Super Hippo Carnival is crazy.
More interesting text in Super Hippo Carnival, able to access Performapal Hip Hippo, serving a similar purpose to how E-Tele was previously used, but at 3 copies for the level 3 body. Marcus Hayden would take the event.
Wait, is Teleport on the ban list at this point?
Yeah, it is.
I think
it's a Kozmo.
On Metal Foes, leaning heavily into the 3 copies of Jowgen the Spiritualist, who was a popular tech option
Jowgen, man.
out Blue Eyes specifically, fixing the Pendulum summonable body, whose defense is high enough to block the entire Blue Eyes normal summon lineup, with most Blue Eyes players not having an out for it in the main deck reliably. Though we've sped through a lot of sets recently, as most only included a couple of notable cards, the structure decks that released a week later would not qualify in that camp, as it would be a pair of structure decks for the first time in years, with one aimed at completely upsetting.
Yeah, these cards. This was really important.
Oh, ABC, dude.
Okay, well, one of them was important.
Yukimoto and Seto Kaiba. Release date October 21st, 20.
One of these was better than the other. I'll leave that to your interpretation.
Set type, structure deck. Major strategies, Magnet Warrior, ABC. Impact, the Machine Uprising. Structure decks Yugi and Kaiba were incredibly interesting pieces,
real
as
quick,
the last time we had seen a structure deck explicitly tied to a character was Merrick back in the 5Ds era. Although you could make an argument that Master of Pendulum was that for Yuya just last year. As they were tied to the titular characters, many expected on initial announcement that these would be further support for both key strategies of Dark Magician and Blue Eyes. But they were actually instead a complete overhaul to key archetypes they both used back in Battle City, being Magnet Warrior for Yugi and XYZ for Kaiba. Starting with Yugi, the Magnet Warrior archetype would get an overhaul with the Electromagnet Warriors, each able to tribute themselves on the opponent's turn to summon a level 4 Magnet Warrior.
Actually, as a Duel Links player, you might think the Magnet Warriors were more impactful.
From deck, with Alpha searching a Magna Warrior on
summon. I remember that being playable in
Gamma summoning a Magna Warrior from hand on summon. These also
I get a lot of requests to build this deck in Master Duel, so I might do that at some point.
Itself by banishing the 3 Electromagnets from hand, field, or grave, can banish a Magnet Warrior in grave.
I've never really played Magna Warriors, so like I have no idea how much fun they are, to be honest.
Both Berserkion and the original Valkyrion, being Imperium Magnum, the superconductive battle bot, who has
like I'm not gonna hate
and destroy, and if removed by an opponent's card effect, summons the 2 Magna Warriors from hand or deck. Magnetic Field was a field spell that could summon a Magnet Warrior from grave if you controlled an Earth Rock once per turn, and can bounce a monster that battles with an Earth Rock but isn't destroyed. Lastly, Magnet Conversion can recur back 3 Magnet Warriors on activation and can banish itself from grave to summon a banished Magnet Warrior. While absolutely interesting and seemingly competent, meshing well with the recent Ties of the Brethren, Magnet Warrior would suffer due to 3 major reasons. Number 1 was the reliance on the original Magnet Warrior monsters, as they were the only.
That's always a great recipe for success, dude. Make me play old vanillas. Surely that's vanilla.
He hates bricks so much, bro. Just embrace it. Embrace the brick.
You had to play bricks. Number 2 was that while Berserkion was a solid presence, you had to find it to summon it, and its effect was slow and required the opponent to remove it to float, being way too reliant on the opponent not knowing how to play around it. Number 3 was that Imperion Magnum, while reasonable to get out thanks to Alpha searching its materials, was extremely resource intensive for a single negation point whose float effect requiring to hit both targets meant that you had to play at least 2 copies of Valkyrion in your deck, a card that was by all metrics a brick. And I know I said 3 reasons, but in reality, there's 4, because released at the exact same time was a very similar concept to the Magnet Warrior retrains, but done far
way better.
The Kaiba structure deck focused on the XYZ unions from Battle City, giving them far better counterparts in A, B, and C, each being a union monster. Wow, it's been a while since we've heard that term. And can equip onto a light machine, each having a destruction tanking effect for its equip monster, an effect while equipped, and an effect when sent to grave. With A making its equip monster immune to monster effects and recurring a union from grave to hand, other than
I never really liked this deck that much.
Monster immune to spells, and switching a union when sent to grave.
Did you know? If you wanted to remember what kind of immunity these cards gave, all you had to do was look at their colors: monster, spell, trap. That's how I remembered it back in the day.
And C making its monster immune to traps and summoning a union from hand when sent to grave. These all
I guess I just remembered by remembering.
A fusion who could be summoned by banishing the A, B, and C from field or grave, could discard and banish a card on a quick effect, and could, on the opponent's turn only, tribute itself to summon 3 banished light machine unions.
You're no weighing now, but how many of you actually knew that?
Similar to Magnet Warriors, A to Z Dragon Buster Cannon was a banished contact fusion of ABC from the original XYZ. that has a repeatable Omni-Negate at the cost of a
Okay.
discard each time, and can banish itself to resummon both ABC and XYZ from banishment. Union Hanger was their new field spell, able to search a Light Machine Union on activation, and can equip an appropriate Light Machine Union from deck to a Light Machine Union that is summoned once per turn. Lastly, Union Scramble can summon up to 3 banished Light Machine normal or Union monsters on activation, and can banish itself from grave to recur another to hand. ABC, to put bluntly, was way better than Magnet Warriors in almost every way. Their field spell let them turbo out 2 monsters at a time, their payoff didn't need to be searched first, the payoff's removal was a quick effect, and in general, level 4 machines already have way more existing support than level 3 rocks do, like Gold and Silver Gadget for example, which in turn makes it easier to
Sex is cool, but if you ever call by an ABC Buster Dragon using both
I know.
effects,
I think ABCs are.
I have
pretty,
not. What the
popular.
fuck?
I guess let me know if you guys like ABC or not. I didn't like it that much.
I mean, Josh,
But
I
that's
never,
probably
I
just
never
because
hated it,
I
but I
like a lot
never
of
found it
other
very
decks
cool
more.
either.
In the same format. It also felt kind of high rolly of like you kind of wanted to go first and pull
Yeah,
off your combo.
If you
do
didn't
that,
draw
it was
Hanger, this deck kind of
weak.
blew, to be
But
honest.
overall, I don't hate ABC. I just like love a lot of the other decks around this time just more. I think.
I agree.
But for the most
Metal
part, I think the ABC deck
Foes,
was
Zombie
pretty popular and people
Piles,
just played it.
VA.
and great. ABC was immediately recognized as
Paleo.
an actually potent deck, with ABC itself being the kicker, as once you've used all the unions to go through and summon various rank 4 bosses, you cap it off with ABC to add a discarding banish and the ability to reflood the board again. There would be no clearer indication of this deck's immediate impact than YCS Liverpool a week later, where ABC would take 14
Dude, this YCS, I played lightsworn, and I would have topped, but then I lost in the last round in this deck breakdown. What do you think is like the worst deck to just play in the last round on the bubble and lose the dice roll to?
Merlantian?
If they draw a good hand, what would you think is like a problem
Or
if you go
DDD.
up against it and they win the dice roll? And
Oh
you just,
god,
like,
it's Dark Synchro.
you know,
He lost the Dark Synchro.
easily Herald. Yeah, that's what I lost to. Last round of Swiss, round 10. I think round 10 or 11. I don't know how
Herald.
big Liverpool was. I think it was round 11. Where both X2 winner makes top cut, loser is out. They roll a freaking I don't know, high number, and they just like a mega combo. Like it was Herald plus Christia game 1 and game 3.
All right, I guess that also does it.
So that was my YCS Liverpool story. That was that. Barcode, thank you for the raid. Welcome everybody. We're waiting for the ban list in less than 90 minutes.
32, almost completely shunting Blue Eyes off its top of the meta position. Utilizing various tools in the rank 4 arsenal like Gold and Silver Gadget, Photon Thrasher, and various rank 4s like Kyutik X and Bujente Tsukiyomi, ABC would absolutely dominate the event, although notably utilizing Artifact Scythe in its lineup with Sanctum, reaching all the way to top 4 on its first outing. Lightsworn continued to both impress and depress, as it would be tied with PK5.
So this deck, I genuinely think this deck was probably the best deck of the format, but it just never got to show that because of how expensive Minerva was and how little copies of Minerva were out there. I think it's shown by how few people had access to it, and it still ended up being super successful, right?
Yeah.
Like the conversion rate for this deck is crazy.
I still think they
Like,
should have been playing the
at
3
YCS Liverpool,
solitaires,
I don't
2
know how many people
Unizombies,
played this
or
deck,
3
maybe
solitaire,
like
1
10 or
Unizombie,
something,
and 2
or
Mizukis.
15, if even, right? And like a lot of those made top cut, or like myself got very close to it.
For the second most represented deck in top 32, bringing even more fuel onto the fire of Minerva's exclusivity. This time around, it would be new variants like
Best
the Light
card in the
Toolbox
game,
using
bro.
Brilliant Fusion to set up its
Tell us
various
now.
tools, as well as a zombie variant with Unizombie and Mizuki that aimed
Yeah,
at
this is
access Omega
better.
repeatedly. DD
This is what my
would
deck
crack
looked
top 32
like.
for the first time here, utilizing their newly released fusion Flame King Genghis to facilitate a far
Ooh,
stronger
so the
scoring
names are
strategy
long
than the
enough.
previous version of the deck. Also utilizing dark level 6 options like Destiny Hero
This
Malicious and Mass
deck
Change 2 for
looks
Dark Law
terrible.
in order to make Beatrice the proper way for further grave setup. Speaking of dark tools, Dark Sync
How much did Minerva cost back then? I think a super rare was about 800 to 1,000.
He's talking euros as well. Back
But
in
I
euros,
think if
are
it
worth
was
way
the
more
case
than
nowadays,
USD.
it would be more expensive. Like this is 8 years ago. I think if nowadays, if a super rare, because that is what like that's what bad super rares go for these days, right? Like a bad super, I mean not quite 800 maybe, but like an
yeah, that's
unplayable
not
super
true.
rare price card is like 500 to 600 at the moment, maybe more if it's not printed anymore. Like if the YCS season is over. So a playable one would
600,
probably
800
be
USD,
easy.
really? I
like-
remember
like
being more.
1,500, 2K or something. If it was playable these days, right? And that's why I think it's very good that we don't have playable prize cards for that matter, right?
would see another top tier, being the first publicly available list for the deck. And looking over this, all of the alarm bells should be going off. This deck was entirely predicated on the idea of hand looping the opponent out of the game with a combination of
How
various
did players not riot? I mean, to be fair, Lightsworn was a good deck and maybe the best deck in the format, but it wasn't like super unfair if someone had Minerva. It wasn't the best deck by that far, right? Like it wasn't like a matter of, oh, if you have Lightsworn, you will just beat everyone else and easily win the tournament. All the other decks were still powerful.
Yeah.
And Lightsworn could easily lose, and like it didn't win this tournament, for example. Like it was like it was a strong option. It wasn't the only option. If it was the only option, it would have been a whole nother issue, right? but still, it was still not great. It still is not a great development if your YCS prize card is so meta relevant like Minerva was in this format. But thankfully it was not the best deck by far. It would have been way more accessible, and it's kind of sad because the deck was pretty fun. But
it is a really fun deck. It is kind of silly.
It could have been so much better, but it also could have been worse. But it's still not ideal.
With level leader, which could eat the levels off of an Omega before banishing it to gain level advantage, or to eat
like Chaos Emperor Dragon for Thunder. Pretty much exactly that. Pretty much exactly that, because like Thunder Dragon during Toss format, first of all, it wasn't the only option. Second of all, you didn't need Chaos Emperor for it. It was optimal to play Chaos Emperor, but you didn't need it.
Yeah, I didn't play it enough.
But it was still very annoying, right?
down to use it as material for an Omega. They also use cards like DDR in order to reuse the Omega hand banish deck just to drive that point home even further. This deck was a bit of a notorious one in the meta too, as naturally you'd think the best way to counter it was Maxx, but that in and of itself was an extremely dangerous gamble. An inexperienced player firing Maxx on Dark Synchro the first opportune moment they could would find their hand loop problem solved by causing an entirely different problem of the opponent committing to the Maxx challenge.
Yeah, you would just get decked out if you Maxx this deck.
Many times that the player that fired Maxx would then proceed to draw so many cards that they'd be decked out the following turn. Many players would try and play around this by going Maxx in response to the first card getting looped out, but in many cases the Dark Synchro player would still have enough gas in the tank to keep going, being a massive thorn in the side of the meta at large. The only things holding the deck back from a full meta takeover was the chance of dead hands, as the deck was built on so many different two-card interactions that it was a common sight to see a completely unplayable hand. And the complexity, as this deck had so many varying lines to go through that learning it in a sufficient manner was a massive challenge in and of itself.
Also, Red Resonator, my boy.
Sarsaparilla Herald would also see the top cut for the first time.
Damn, that was crazy. He just said that.
Knife of Swords.
What the fuck?
Seraph, a Herald of Perfection to summon, additional fairies.
Just outwardly saying Red Resonator is his voice. Crazy.
To the Herald board, being a solid.
There they are, my nemesis.
Would take the event on PK Fire, notably running a line of 3 Chaos Hunter in the main board to prevent the opponent from banishing cards, blocking them out of summoning ABC, as well as Ghost Reaper being able to clean up most matches by revealing Dante, ABC, or Spirit Dragon. If you thought the ABC shook up the meta though, you haven't seen anything yet, as the last core set was just around the corner, and it would take the newly broken up meta.
Let's go
with some of the strongest support to existing archetypes we've seen in a long time.
This card is cool, Mithrilium.
There he is!
Invasion Vengeance. Release date November 4th, 2016. Set type, core set.
Fuck
Major
this
strategies, Metal Foes, Paleozoic, Frog. Impact.
Well, if it isn't froggily amazing. I messed it up!
Inoff was the last core set of the year, and its job was fairly simple. Support the strategies introduced in Dark Illusion, which it handled more effectively than I think any of us at the time were ready for. Starting with Metal Foes, their support
yeah, and the market was very different back then.
The same scale effect, but if popped, search a Metal Foes monster in the end phase, notably being level 1, meaning it was, at the time, impossible to pendulum summon back out from the extra. Alcahest, a fusion of a Metal Foes and a normal monster that can quick effect relinquish a monster, gaining defense equal to its attack, able to use its equipped monster as material for a Metal Foes fusion. Mithrilium, a fusion of a Metal Foes and a pendulum, able to shuffle back 2 Metal Foes cards and grave to bounce a card, floating into a Metal Foes pendulum and face an extra or grave
the full Metal Foes fusion,
full Metal Foes fusion, a quick play fusion spell for Metal Foes. This support would change practically everything about the more pure variants of Metal Foes, giving them interaction on the opponent's turn in Alcahest, who can now be summoned on the opponent's turn with full Metal Foes fusion, but also in Mithrilium, who not only provides great removal, she recycles your used spells and traps to then reset with the scale effects, and her float effect also goes off when used as fusion material, making her easily the most important piece of the deck now. This would shoot Metal Foes up the ranks of the meta into a tier 1 to 2 position, able to compete solidly with.
It was already tier 1 though.
Spiral would receive a couple of interesting new pieces in Master Plan, able to search a Spiral mission.
Okay, I'll give it to you. These two were a little overtuned.
Resort's awesome, bro.
Yeah.
Resort is sick.
Spiral Resort and a Spiral monster when sent from field to grave, and Spiral Resort, which gave your other Spiral cards targeting protection.
It still didn't break Spiral, but these were very breakable cards. Let's say it like that. It was very it was dangerous to make these.
Search the Spiral monster once per turn, and shuffles a monster from grave into deck as maintenance cost to prevent destruction. While these wouldn't do anything in the short term, Master Plan would be theorized as an insanely powerful piece for the strategy, able to search 3 cards by itself, with the caveat being the deck currently had no reliable way to summon her or get her off the field.
Hamood, think about it 27. I was never around during Metal Foes release, but I think they're so cool. Metal Foes were cool, yeah. Metal Foes, they are cool.
But if those 2 hurdles could be cleared, she had the potential to make Spiral a meta threat by herself. Paleozoic would receive the remainder of its cards here.
Why did he start off with Eldonia?
Dynamist, able to banish a face-up card for a discard. Morella, able to dump a trap from deck. Lincolnia, able to return a banished card to grave. And Opapinia, a rank 2 that's unaffected by monster effects, but which activate Paleozoic traps from hand, and has a trap as material, can detach to search a Paleozoic trap once per turn. This would do a lot to iron out the flaws in Paleo as a deck, giving them a proactive play in Opapinia to activate from hand, as well as better Paleos in Dynamist and Morella. But to say this was all
more names as well,
disingenuous. As well, this was all the archetypal support they got. There was also another Exceed release here that should be talked about with them. Totally awesome.
Let's go.
Localization at the time is a fucking joke. Is an auto-locked rank 2 that can detach.
Okay, how do we feel about the name of Totally Awesome?
I like Totally Awesome, the name.
Is it terrible? Or is it like...
Same question for you guys,
so
chat.
Cringe that it's already funny? That it's like, okay?
The old name was Tree Toad.
I'm more on the side of like, I think it's funny. I think it's okay.
You love it?
Like, I like it.
Goated? Yeah, I think it's good.
It's like better. It has more...
Best name, love it, love it.
It just has a better ring to it than if it just was
totally
called, like,
French is horrible.
Tree Toad? Come
it's
on,
cheesy, but you like
throw
it. It's
pun
good,
here and
awesome,
there.
it's
okay.
fine.
Why not?
Oh, what's its French name?
Why not have a little pun in there?
The best name in the game. I don't know if it's the best name in the game, but it's good. I like it.
For an Omni Negate and destroy.
The only issue with it is how it like probably in most other languages it doesn't make sense.
It took me
right?
a
I feel
while
like
to get a
that's what they
headset.
sacrificed.
No, I got this before.
Because I only know from the German translation it doesn't make any sense. I don't know how it is in other languages, but in anything else it doesn't. In any other language, I don't think it makes sense. In Italian, it does. Oh, okay. The German one makes no sense.
It's just like a direct translation.
Because what they did, I'll tell you what they did. For the German one, they actually just translated this name. So there's no wordplay anymore. It's just this name, but exactly translated.
That is pretty stupid.
Which it's called
Teuteleg
Umwerfen,
Umwerfen?
which makes no sense. They should have called it Todeskrass. For any Germans in here, that's what it should have been. But they didn't.
You can set that card to your field, and if sent to grave, recurs back a water monster. This card would be a massive meta shifter, as with it, Paleozoic had an Omni Negate it could access thanks to the entire archetype being Aqua level 2s, in addition to a perfect rank 2 engine it can now access for going first plays, being that of Frog. In addition, Totally's Omni Negate didn't require materials, meaning that by cheating it out with Bahamut Shark, you could tribute itself for its Omni Negate effect, then put it back in extra with its recursion.
Good old
meaning that
Bahamut Toad.
The Germans
Still a
get it.
thing
The
in
Germans
today.
get it.
Maxx could also use it, which we'd see the implications of with the upcoming YCSs. Doki Doki can discard a rock to summon another from deck with the same level and attribute, being a decent option for Magnet Warriors for now, but would be far more useful in a couple of
creaming
years.
himself
Mare
right
was a
now.
level 7 tuner that could lower his level
Mare! I love this card.
Extremely interesting combo enabler when used with Yazi, and would get far more popular with the next era of the game. Starving Venom Fusion Dragon would be the
with
fourth of the
Lynx
mechanic
and
dragons, taking 2 dark monsters on the
Destrugo.
field, gains the attack of an opponent's special summon monster on Fusion Summon, and can copy a level 5 or higher name.
God, Yazi Mare. I miss those days. I want to play that again.
This would be notably the weakest of the 4 dragons for now, as the only real card that could make it without sinking too many resources was Super Poly, which was currently banned, leaving Starving Venom in a weird spot for now. Meteor Black Comet Dragon is a fusion of a level 7 Red Eyes and a level 6 dragon, can dump a Red Eyes from deck on summon to burn for half its original.
Yeah,
attack,
surely
and
Red
revives
Eyes
a
Insight and Red Eyes Fusion make Meteor Black Comet Dragon, not anything else that's
Can someone explain the
toxic
German joke? I don't
and
think I can.
and
I don't think
broken.
there is an explanation if you don't speak German, unfortunately. It's very hard to explain a pun to someone who doesn't yeah.
Spell Trap. These two would help form an FTK of sorts for Red Eyes, specifically in that Meteor summon with Red Eyes Fusion, and then 2 copies of Inferno Fire Blast would be 8,200 damage, which while an extremely inconsistent FTK thanks to Inferno Fire Blast not being searchable, was still one to be aware of. Denglong, First of the Yang Zing, is a level 5 synchro that searches a Yang Zing card on summon,
fuck
dump
this
a worm
card.
to copy its level, and floats into a Yang Zing when it leaves field. This first effect would standardly be used to search their new counter trap 9 Pillars, which by popping a Yang Zing at the end of its effect was an Omni Negate and shuffle back, making Denglong a level 5 synchro with a generic Omni Negate, which would be attractive for many strategies. Vermilion Dragon Mech was a
God
TCG
damn that
exclusive
card.
level 9 synchro that could banish a tuner engrave to pop a card, and if destroyed by card effect, recur to banish tuner, being a solid option.
This card was neat.
Lastly, Dimensional Barrier could lock the summon effects of either rituals, fusions, synchros, exceeds, or pendulums for a turn, being an extremely powerful floodgate to an entire mechanic of your choosing, but was also seen as problematic immediately because it listed all of the mechanics it hit, meaning that if a new mechanic came up within a year, as many expected would happen as we were coming up on the 3-year mark since pendulums, Barrier wouldn't affect it. Still, for now, it was an extremely useful floodgate, which would find its way into
Yes, the links that were coming.
YCS Rio would be a week later, and though ABC was clearly still
Rio
the top
de
dog in the format
Janeiro.
off of this, a shakeup had happened with Metal Foes rising up the ladder. With the additions of Alcahest and Mithrilium, Metal Foes had ditched some of the more niche options in its arsenal for more standard pendulum pieces like the Majespecter package and Luster Pendulum, turning it into the go-to pendulum deck of the format. Painful Decision was also
Well, I being
starting to get more
King Kun, I
popular
will
in the
be
deck for
King
accessing
Kun,
basically
yeah.
whatever scale you needed. As now with Mithrilium, the dump scale wasn't gone for good, as you could just float back into it later or
Painful Decision is just another one of those cards that you should not think about too much what's happening on the artwork. We don't talk about the fact that either Ojama Black or Ojama Green is going to die and eaten by the shark.
cycle it back to the deck for her bounce effect. Paleozoic would find its first top tier too, utilizing the Frogs as an engine to access rank 2s on the first turn, either for Toad, backed up by a series of traps, or for Opabinia to churn out the Paleos on the first turn without needing to set them first. As the deck was super reliant on traps in the first place, it made sense that its lineup would be chock full of floodgates and counters to top strategies, such as Anti-Spell, Floodgate Trap Hole, Clicking Mirror Force,
Rest
and
in peace to
Barrier
Jamas. I would
Most
sacrifice
interesting
green.
Yeah, we don't need
which serve the
those.
purpose of
So
being
we get an
protected
FU little
against
Jama Green. Oh, someone just spammed it.
those.
Yeah,
which in
fuck
turn
you, little
turns
Jama
into
Green.
and Grave,
13 extra.
You
It's
can
probably just
die.
an incomplete
Bye
list.
bye.
making it an incredibly important inclusion.
Like I'm looking at this out there was definitely a Dante missing
Leo
for
de
cherries.
Abaldia, the 2010s Worlds winner, would take the event on ABC, with the only real change to the deck being the inclusion of Dimensional Barrier, as ABC was one of the best decks to utilize it since it could pivot between fusions and exceeds
Oh, I'm
better
part
than
of
some other
Inquisitiveness
strategies.
as
This would lead
well.
us into the last
Yeah.
set of the year, and with so much changing so fast, many were curious if the last set could bring another shakeup before the year closed out.
Dude, Abyss Actors. I don't want to talk about Abyss Actors.
Destiny Soldiers. Release date
Why do you
November
know anything about Abyss
Is
Actors?
this the
This set
Dark Lord
sucks.
one?
2016. Set type, deck building set. Major strategies, Destiny Hero, Abyss Actor, Dark Lord. Impact, 1 new rogue level threat. Destiny Soldiers was the last
Really?
set of the year,
Like,
bringing
it was-
3
this
dark
was a
attribute
dog
archetypes
shit
to try
set.
and shake things up one last time. Abyss Actor would be the first of these, being a series of pendulums focused around their spells, the Abyss scripts, which had different effects based on whether they're activated or destroyed while set, which unfortunately were not successful at the time in the slightest, even as pieces in a pendulum pile. Destiny Hero would be the second of these, bringing new support to the strategy focused around their cards as
Yeah.
Dude, Drill Dark was insane in Duelings.
used in the recent stint of the Arc 5 anime. Drill Dark
The
is some of
bar
the
for
heroes
insane
from
and
Summon
Dueling
with
is
lesser
so
evil to
low, I
itself
feel
and
like
piercing, Dark Angel can discard itself if you have 3 or more D heroes engraved to summon a D hero from grave to the opponent's board, negating and destroying any spells activated by its controller, and can banish itself and another D hero from
why
grave
reacting to reaction?
Stack a normal spell from
It's
deck on top of the deck.
Reactception, bro.
Celestial can pop an opponent's face-up spell when it attacks to burn for 500. It can banish itself and another D hero while you have no cards in hand to draw 2. And Dystopia is a fusion of 2 D heroes that can burn for half of a level 4 lower D hero's attack.
It's much higher now. Yeah, it is. Partially because of how broken the
the
skills are.
Needless to say, the support lacked a lot of focus, but it would give Hero a couple of interesting tools for the future to play around with, not really changing the strategy's position for now. Lastly, and most importantly, were the Dark Lords, most of which shared an effect to pay 1,000 life on quick effect to copy a Dark Lord spell trap effect from grave, then shuffled it back into deck. Ixchel could discard herself and another Dark Lord card to draw 2, Tex Catlapoca could discard itself to prevent the destruction of Dark Lord
Monkey
monsters,
plus 1
Nastic
body,
could discard 2
FPK,
other Dark Lord cards
yeah.
to summon itself from hand, and Amdust could discard itself and another
not
Dark Lord with her Dark
fucking
Lord
Duelings,
card.
bro.
Morningstar was the only one here without the copy effect, able to summon Dark Lords from deck on tribute summon up to the number of effect monsters the opponent had targeting protection while you controlled another Dark Lord, and can mill cards up to the
Will
number of
Rhoda be
Dark
legal
Lords
for
you control,
Cancun?
being
No,
500
it
for each
won't
Dark
be.
Lord card milled that way. As for their spell traps, Banishment searched a Dark Lord card, Contact revived a Dark Lord, Rebellion could send a Dark Lord from hand or field to grave to pop card, and Enchantment could do the same to brain con a monster for the turn, with the traps notably skipping their costs if used by the Dark Lord copy effect. This would be a bold departure from the GX era cards, although Desire and Superbia specifically would also be useful for this new version of the deck, giving more swarming.
Was
and even
Desire
spot
really
removal for
usable?
strategy. Though it was
Well,
a
Edit
deck,
Array
sure,
is
Dark
like
Lord being a deck of
unplayable,
high-level monsters
so
with only 2 reliable
yeah.
ways to get one on field initially left the deck in a position of bricking a lot, which in turn meant that for now, Dark Lord would be relegated to the ever-growing gallery of rogue-level decks. YCS Anaheim would follow 2 weeks later, and with a new pool of cards from Inov, new strategies
Paleo
would
should have
start
won
popping
this
up.
event.
Toad and its consequences would result
I wish
in
I
the
got to
appearance of
play
not only
this.
Mermail, taking advantage of the new Bahamut Shark target to regain some of its relevance
No ban list? I mean, it was never going to happen yet. What are you talking about?
lost with the shuffling of the meta, but also in, of all places, Hero. Because Bahamut Shark could access Toad, the deck had resorted back to an old favorite, being Bubble Man, as it could be half of a
This deck's crazy.
Bahamut Shark very easily either with another copy of itself or with 10
Yeah,
Goldfish,
Bahamut
which had always been
Toad
considered for a Shadow Mist
into
enabler, never
Dark
really had a
Claw.
reason to be
You
played
wanna
over something
throw
like
up
Goblinberg until now. As
Cancer
such, Dark
Aztec.
Claw and Toad would become more and more common as Hero rose back into a tier 3 position in the meta.
Guess what I
Dark
played?
Lord
I mean, I know you played the hero deck.
took 2 top spots on its first outing, being able to mitigate its bricks in a Swiss setting, but crumbling a bit in single elimination, falling out
Dark Lord Zerato. They were down bad
in
for Allure
competition,
and Trade
though
and
notably
Target.
playing 3 copies of Dark Lord Zerato from Phantom Darkness as a 1 tribute.
Yeah, this is a deck list of all time.
Thanks to Denglong, in addition to the metal
Damn,
cards,
these are
enabling
some
the game's
shitty deck
photo decks in a
lists,
major
fuck.
way, which in turn allowed for the deck to set up both Denglong and Zephyr which resulted in multiple 9 pillars to form a
This
defense.
deck is also wild.
Elvis Vu would take the event on ABC, utilizing the Brilliant Fusion engine as a way to flood board and to access the ABC pieces on the light dump for easier access to the Fusion ABC itself. YCS Bokum would be 2 weeks later, being the last YCS of the year, and with it,
Still not enough Paleos. Paleo is for sure the best deck in this format.
being
Not
that
even
of
close in
ABC,
my opinion.
Metalfoes, Paleozoic, and Hero. Paleo had shown the most growth here over time since release, as it had trimmed its monster and spell count down to about as low as it could
Is this mine? No, this is not mine. I didn't play Pakaya.
go, being that of a
Did I play Pakaya?
I liked Pakaya.
I don't think I played Pakaya. I played Pakaya?
Frog Engine, Maxi, and Desires,
Okay.
leaving the rest of the deck to be Impact Traps and Paleos, with probably the most interesting pivot here being that of Reckless Greed, filling a similar niche to how it was used back in Dark World to stack multiple
Is this
together.
Josh's
Seems like
deck? I have
something
no
you should
idea.
know, not us. Because I feel like I remember playing, or going back and forth between playing 41 with Pakaya or 40 without Pakaya. I thought I decided playing 40 without Pakaya. I'm looking this up right now.
There's no card demise here. I like that in this deck.
We all expected, utilizing the Shiranui engine in addition to various level 1 and 2 tuner options alongside Beast of the Pharaoh.
Is Yu-Gi-Oh the easiest TCG to play?
With Beast of the Pharaoh able to revive
No,
zombie
but you'll
master
have
when
fun
it's
if you
a
play
summon,
Yu-Gi-Oh,
Master
so
then
play
being able to
Yu-Gi-Oh.
discard to revive Beast, and then with a level 1 tuner makes Omega, or a level 2 makes Trishula, reviving the Master with Beast to do it all over
This
again.
deck list
Billy
looks
Drake would take
terrible.
the event on Metalfoes, marking his 4th YCS win, which at the time made him the player with the most total YCS wins, which would be his last YCS win as he would retire from the competitive side of the game to work for Konami in their development of the
Yeah,
game.
the
sometime
decline
after
of
August
Billiam
2017.
Break.
Look,
Had a rough
I could say
2017.
stuff right now about this finals, but I think instead we're just gonna at some point probably watch it together. I thought about this in the before. I think we're gonna do a react to the back-to-back finals situation at some point. But yeah, that was great. Was it the Paleo final? Yeah, I lost to Billy in the finals of this YCS.
His 4th YCS win, which at the time made him the player
How many cards in his deck are his favorite? I think in this particular one, it would probably be Vanity's Emptiness for no particular reason.
with the most total YCS wins, which would be his last YCS win as he would retire from the competitive side of the game to work for Konami in their development of the game sometime after August of 2017. And with that,
He only
2016
started working on
Yu-Gi-Oh!
like
would come to an
2020.
end.
But
But
yeah.
what an insanely packed year it was. We'd seen the rise and immediate fall of a tier 0 Titan, multiple formats with at least 4 decks vying.
It was a crazy year. At some point, did just more things happen in the year of Yu-Gi-Oh? Because I feel this one, it was 2 hours long, but it didn't feel like you were like packing more stuff in just because it just more happened.
Yeah, stuff also got left out. I feel like there's more events and that, yeah.
I like that year. Oh, 2016 is great. 2016 is a great year overall.
It
Like,
was.
even the
The start
even
was rough, I
the
think.
pendulum like after they deal with tier 0 pendulum,
Yeah,
like
Europe didn't have Pepe at full power. That shit was not fun, but yeah.
the pendulum odd eyes Kirin piles that are part of Monarch BAPK formats, they're cool. 2016 was a really cool year for Yu-Gi-Oh! I think. I liked 2016 a lot.
For the top position, and so many shifts in the game that it's hard to believe it all happened within a single year. But unfortunately, a storm was coming. We were about to enter 2017, and with it would come more than just a new tier 0 menace. It would also bring a shift that many would doomcry as the end of Yu-Gi-Oh! As we knew it. I mean, come on.
It was a big difference, 2017, but 2018 was the year that got actually bad. I think 2017 was fine. I would like to say, guys, thank you all for watching. Make sure you go like and subscribe to both Josh's video as well as the original video by the law. But also, while I appreciate all of you here supporting me, so if you do want me to keep streaming as much as possible and giving you guys content, whether it be React content, Master Duel, reading new cards, loading combos together, all the type of thing, please consider showing support with a like, subscribe, and of course, so yeah, just something that would help out a lot.